Welcome, welcome everyone. I am Robin Carter. I am the Donor Services Vice President for the Northeast Division, and I am also talking to you today because I am the co-chair for the Culture Initiative along with Paul Sullivan, who is our Donor Services Senior Vice President. I'm super excited to kick us off and to tell you a little bit about like holistically what the Culture Initiative is, a little bit of what your role is, and I'll say Sam Smith, who is also here on camera, will go into a lot more detail on like the governance and the process and like the teams and all the squads and like what to expect a little bit later in the day. And then Bob's going to go through a whole bunch of training to really help you um, get in the positive culture mindset, some of the tools that those who have been on the team for a while have learned, and to kind of get you guys all up to speed. So when our next Culture Thursday happens in another week and a half or so, then you guys will be ready to hit the ground running in as part of this national team. So thank you all for joining. Let me share my screen and get this going. While this is coming up, I'll also throw in a plug for any of our collections team members who are on the team, both mobiles and fixed sites, that here through the team's app, we are able to pull attendance. So we can like download the attendance of who all's here. We'll send it to your APS folks to make sure that you get counted and paid for today. If you clocked in, that's fine. That works too. The APS folks will just do a double check to make sure that you do get paid for attending this training all day today. So thank you for joining, and I super appreciate you guys volunteering to be part of this team. So let me jump into it a little bit. Hold on, let me get my screens all looking right here. Okay. On why we are here today. So the Culture Initiative has a few objectives. It started like maybe September 2022, I feel like. Bob and Sam, yes, thank you. Okay. September of 2022 is when we really kicked off this Culture Initiative. It was a brainchild of Paul Sullivan and a few other folks. Chris Rhoda, our president in Biomed, got excited for it. Gail McGovern, our president at the time, was super excited for what we could really do to create a real appealing, enticing, exciting culture for all of our donor services friends. And we started it in donor services just because we have the largest group of employees here at the Red Cross. And it's actually already spread, and we have culture initiatives that have started already in supply chain and service delivery. So that's like our manufacturing team, our distribution teams, our transportation folks. So they have started their own culture initiatives now. They are doing a bit of like copying and pasting all the good work that we have done over the last couple of years. So I'm excited that they are stealing some of our good ideas and implementing them in their groups. And we should see a lot more cross coverage here of culture initiatives. So I'm excited for that. But when we first started here a couple years ago on this culture initiative, we set out with three primary objectives that we were hoping to achieve. So I'll go through them and explain them a little bit. So first, make the customer experience we provide to our donors, each other, and our stakeholders even better. And really having, we have a good experience. We provide good experiences to our donors. We really do a good job already. But in my perception, I think a lot of people's perception, there's no like end game on how good you can be at making a customer experience excellent. I'd say, right, even like those who are top bar, the Disneys of the world, the Marriotts of the world, that's probably not a good example, but those who are known for their good customer service, their excellent customer service, they never consider themselves done at providing good customer experience, and how we can really do that with not only our donors, our sponsors, but also each other on our teams, with our partners and other departments. Like, how can we keep making this experience at work as good as it possibly can be? The second one is create an engaging donor services work environment that makes all of us feel good about coming to work every day. Personally, I love working at the Red Cross. I've been here for 20 years because I love it, not because I don't like it. And we want all of our team members to feel that way. All of our folks, when they come to work, to feel like they are excited. We do a hard job. So the objective isn't to necessarily make the job not hard, because that's just the nature of blood services, is that it's going to be a hard job, but it can be a hard job, but also rewarding, and make folks feel real excited to come and be with their team members, be with their bosses, be with their donors, with their sponsors, and have a good time doing hard things. And it supports teamwork needed to consistently achieve our collections goals and the broader Red Cross mission. So again, that's similar, like how can we work not only within our teams, but with other teams, internal and external to the organization. So as you notice across these three things, there's a lot of teamwork. There's a lot of creating a fun environment, a positive environment. And of course, we can't do anything at the Red Cross or in biomed or in donor services without measuring it. So of course we have metrics that we're tracking, which I'll say these metrics aren't like a one-for-one for the culture initiative. There's lots of stuff happening within the organization that feeds into these metrics, but culture definitely does have a positive impact. So I'll start with the first one, the positive experience. That is the donor positive experience we get from those donor surveys. And since we began in FY22, we have seen a marked increase from 74.8 to 79.7. That might not seem like a big number jump, but that is like very significant in the statistical world of like moving those numbers. There's a lot of donors who fill out a lot of surveys. And those are really impressive numbers to see an increase in donor appreciation for coming to our blood drives and having a good experience. The second one that we're measuring and monitoring is employee retention. So our team members working for us, wanting to continue to work for us and staying working for us. And that has increased from 51.8% to this past year, 66.3%. So that is a pretty significant increase in employee retention. And folks who are staying within the organization. And what I love to see also is, by the way, folks who stay within the organization and then like to get promoted throughout the organization and just continue to grow their career. There's so much opportunity at the Red Cross, and to be able to foster that, I think is real exciting. And then the last number that we monitor and report out on is our engage results. And that also has increased over this 3-year period from 61% up to 65%. And that's the annual engage survey that we all complete in the spring, which by the way is coming up in a few months here. I think we'll do it again in May. There might even be a Pulse one coming up in a couple weeks. But those engage survey results to really get a sense for how things are going for our employees and what type of stuff we can work on and focus on. And I'll tell you those engage results, I'll just put a plug in that we look at those and we look at them like in great detail. And we use them for when we're going to try to figure out what we should focus on in the next year. When Sam talks about the commitments that we made out of the last couple of summits, she'll talk about that in a few hours. They start from those engage results. And we look through those. We have a whole team of folks as part of this culture team, like you can volunteer to be on one of these teams that look at those results and then figure out what kind of stuff we should be working on for the coming years. So hugely important to fill out those surveys. Okay, I'll keep going. That was my own plug. So let's get to governance. So we have a few like systems set up to make this culture initiative really long lasting and deep within the organization. So first is the culture team. That is what you have joined today. This is why you are here today on this training. This is why you'll be joining our Culture Thursdays every other Thursday, starting, I think it's on the 16th is the next one. So you are now on the culture team. It's comprised of about 100 members of donor services from all functions. Mobile collections, fixed site collections, donor recruitment, tele-recruitment, APS, the scheduling department, BVWE, technical training, marketing. I might have got them all, right? Those are all departments within donor services. And our team has members from all of those departments who attend these culture team meetings and ideally are giving us some ideas and perspectives on how the things that are happening within donor services are impacting them and their groups, and some ideas for how we can continue to make things even better. It's from all levels of the organization, from frontline staff up to manager, director, VP. I'm a VP. Paul Sullivan is on these calls. We are all on these calls to try to keep making things even better from all levels of the organization. So a big thank you all for volunteering and agreeing to being on this culture team. We're super looking forward to your opinions and feedback. So then we also have the Executive Steering Committee, it's comprised of Paul, his direct reports. Sam Smith is on it, who's our program lead. So you'll see lots of stuff coming from Sam as part of the culture team. Bob is on it. And then we have a lot of our process partners. I won't go through all these names, but we have a lot of process partners who really help us implement some of the ideas and thoughts that we have. We can't do it alone, and we need their help. And so they are crucial in helping us implement some of the initiatives that we've embarked on. So we have the steering committee. And so the steering committee, one, gives ideas to the team of things that they're thinking about, and also things that the culture team wants to implement, goes through the steering committee to make sure, say, it's not like in conflict, or the timing works right for like other projects and stuff happening, because we don't want to like do things in an isolated bubble without thinking about all the other projects and things going on around the organization. So that's what that steering committee's role is. Then we also have culture champions. So some of you are definitely on the culture team. You might also be a culture champion. So the culture team is like the national team that works on like system level projects. Culture champions are local folks who work with directors and RDSCs to really help implement some of the stuff that's coming out of the culture team into your local regions. Like it might be helping set up like the Spirit Week, or setting up your TED Days. When we had the highlights extravaganza, hopefully y'all had your like your keychain squeegee things. The highlights extravaganza, like help implement that within your regions or your departments. So you could be a culture champion and on the region team or on the national team. So, oh, there it is. Excellent. Ribs, was it? It's not the name that's written there. Yes. Okay. There's a squeegee. So you could be on both. You could be a culture champion and you could be on the culture team. And then we also have culture ambassadors. So the culture ambassador, I'm gonna like go back in the way back days from when we did our first ideation survey 2 years ago and asked everyone in donor services for ideas on how we can get even better. At that point, we also asked, who is someone that you know that exhibits excellent culture in the organization or in donor services? And we got a list, I want to say it was like 600 names. It was a ridiculously long list of folks who were submitted that exhibit good culture within donor services. We were so grateful for that list. The team that was in charge of that squad did reach out to all of those people and thank them for exhibiting good culture, and many of them actually made videos of what good culture means to them, and they gave quotes and pictures, and they have helped spread the message of good culture. So they don't have like an official job other than to keep being their awesome selves. So perhaps you are also nominated for a culture ambassador I don't know, award, acknowledgement back a couple years ago. And so maybe you have the trifecta and you've been all three, in which case, super awesome, and thank you. We are in the process of revamping the Culture Ambassador program and really making it like an ongoing award nomination process. So it's not really a nomination. If you get nominated, you're getting an award. But we're in the process of rolling that out this month. So you'll hear more about that in upcoming calls. So those are like the 3/4 different groups that like really help us get culture into the organization. So I'll go a little bit about like where we've been and where we're going. This will be my last slide here. So the first year, well, I'll say that like the first year back in 2022, we were like figuring this out. We were getting like people in place. We were figuring out like how we're going to meet, who we're going to include, like how do we even get started. So I'll say that was like the first like 9 months or so. And then once we got it all started, our first like real year of like getting the culture process going was really like building it and creating a foundation. So the stuff that was implemented was huge stuff, which hopefully you have seen within your day-to-day lives here. One is the vision survey and the vision statement, which is there at the bottom. It says empowering people, inspiring donors, saving lives. Hopefully today's not the first time you have heard that. That is our vision statement that actually came from a survey that went out to everyone in donor services. And this is the one that was voted on and we've implemented. And now it's hopefully lots of folks' email signatures and everywhere. We implemented the Culture Thursdays. So that's every other Thursday. We kick off with a culture team meeting. That's what you guys will all be on. And then throughout the day, we have squad meetings for any squads that you want to attend that works on specific projects and initiatives. Sam will go into detail about those squads a little bit later this afternoon once you get a little bit more through the training. And you can select what squad you might be interested in joining. The Celebration Squad has done a ton. You've probably seen their stuff more than any other thing within the initiative. So they are the folks behind the Spirit Week. They did a lot of engaged promotions. They created a lot of celebration toolkits. They helped get rolled out the highlights extravaganza. They do like lots of the fun stuff that you have seen out in the world. And so hopefully you've seen a lot of their good work. We're actually working on growing that team because there's just so much celebration stuff to do that we're going to split that into a couple of teams and get more folks working on it. Shout out if you are creative and like to do fun celebratory things, that team could use more people. We had the Team Empowerment Days come out of this initiative, which formerly called Staff Development Days, now called TEDS, Team Empowerment Days. So hopefully you have all attended at least one of those, maybe a couple at this point. The culture highlights formation. So those are the campaigns like highlights and sharing up. We've done a ton of management training and development. So everyone from supervisors up through Paul Sullivan has attended a lot of trainings on how to really be a good leader and coach in a positive way. And hopefully you've seen that as we have gone through all these trainings over the last 2 years or so. We've had two surveys of the annual idea gathering survey, and that really feeds into, we take the information from Engage, and then we do like a more detailed survey to really try to get to like what's the stuff behind those Engage results. So like if we did, I'm going to make up an example. If we did score super well on communication, like what could that mean? What could good communication look like? And you'd get a survey that asked those questions and had like lots of open-ended on like what would you like to see? How can we make things even better? And it's that information that we actually take to the next one, which is the annual Culture Summit. So we've had 2 summits so far. That's where we bring about 100 people to DC from all levels of the organization and really talk through some of those I'll say high points that came out of those surveys. And, we generally have workshops with specific topics and do a lot of brainstorming and idea gathering and problem solving in that summit. It's a 2-day summit and I'll say full of amazing ideas. And that really sets us up for our commitments that'll come after the summit. And then the last thing that we really focused on setting up last year was the Culture Champions monthly call to action. So as I talked about the Culture Champions that we have in every region, every department, we have started giving them a call to action. So it's not just like sitting on a call. Hopefully, if you are a culture champion, you've seen that there's been like an actual thing to do every month. And so stuff is like the habit campaign, promotion, engage promotion. We've done stuff around like sickle cell engagement, LGBTQ plus education, like that kind of stuff has come out of those culture champion call to actions. So that was like the first year. It's like getting all that stuff stood up was the first year. And to be fair, that was a ton of work. And there was a lot of people who worked really hard on getting all that stuff stood up. This second year, our focus this year is on how do we sustain this initiative and how do we get it deeper into the organization. So, right, in an ideal world, we want every employee here in donor services to feel like they work in a good culture, to feel like it has impacted them. And, part of it is getting socks, part of it is doing fun activities, but really it's like the day-to-day work every day when you come to work. You might be like, well, that was a hard day, but it's not like that was an awful day, right? That's not what we want people leaving work like. We want people to leave work like, who maybe that was hard, but that was also great. And I saved lives today and I feel good about what I did today. So that is what our next step is. That is not an easy thing to do. And I'll say, if you guys have ideas, this is what we're looking for. Like, how can we really get this deeper into the organization so it feels like it touches on every employee? So that's where our focus has been this year. Again, Sam will talk about it when she gets to her section about the commitments we made last year and the commitments we're making this year to really try to foster this deeper within the organization opportunity. And I'll say the ideas that we've already started working at isn't the end of it. It's kind of the start of it. So we're still looking for more ideas. I'll turn it back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you. All right. Well, a lot of information. And as Robin said, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask her or Sam. I can answer some of them, but they know the most. So let me introduce myself for those that don't know me. I'm an external partner to the Red Cross and have been for a number of years. So I'm an author, keynote speaker, positive change agent. That's what I describe myself as because I jump in and get involved and help change be positive and make sure that the change itself is as positive as the outcome. I've been doing this for about 36 years, and I'm a real brain geek. As a matter of, so one of the things I'm going to talk about today a number of times is different things about the research on our brain and the social science and how it influences culture and teams and how we relate to people, communicate and feel about things. And just out of curiosity, can you do the thumbs up icon if you're kind of a brain geek and you're interested in hearing? Because usually I just sort of speak in generalities, but I can also throw in some of the brain terminology if there's some other brain geeks on the call. But otherwise, I don't want to bore people. All right, got a couple. All right, okay, a bunch coming in. All right, there you go. And some people go, no, please don't bore me like that. All right. So I first started working with a LEAD program, which there's a couple of folks on here that have gone through LEAD programs. Nice to see you all. I helped design it in 2011 and been working with it since then. And so that really built a lot of connections there. And because of that, I've ended up doing team building, leadership training, retreats, et cetera, for all lines of service within the Red Cross and many of the support groups as well. I'm a blood donor as well, and also donor ambassador. Started doing that actually during the pandemic when my schedule slowed down dramatically, and all of a sudden I had time. And it was one of the most fulfilling things I'd ever done, by the way, being out there on the front lines, particularly pre-vaccine. Just everyone who walked through that door was a hero. Who worked there, who donated. It was just, it was incredible. It was just an amazing experience. And I've always felt really close to the mission, but that really brought it to the next level for me. And to hear people's stories about why they were doing it, I'm like, wow. Everyone they walked in, I was like, you're a hero for being here. Like, no, I'm just doing this because, they're so, well, that's what anyone do. I'm like, no, most people are not doing that. And usually they had a story, right? Something that happened in their lives. Some of the Red Cross has made a difference, or someone whose life was saved by blood donations, et cetera. And my first contact actually with the Red Cross was way back when I was a CPR instructor back in 1990. So a lot of good connections. I really enjoyed that. So that's enough about me. I want to jump into sort of the purpose. This Robin pretty much covered most of this, but I'm just going to let you over this and see if you have any extra questions. Throw anything in the chat box. I like hearing the chuckles as people are coming back in. So what stood out for you so far, or observations or questions about what it means to be part of the culture team so far? Throw it in the chat, raise your hand.
What stood out to me is, since this has been going on, all three areas that have been focused on, there's been improvement. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, me too. Very gratifying. And part of our goal is to keep those numbers going up, as well as to keep finding there's culture changes. It doesn't change uniformly across an organization, right? So there's people that are first adopters, they jump in, they buy in, they're excited, and there's people that start getting excited about it and building, going along with it. And then there are folks that are like, research shows about 20% of people resist even positive changes, even ones that benefit them. So part of our goal is to gradually tap it, more and more of that last group and bring them on board as well, as make it good for everybody.
One thing I didn't know is that this group was the people who were going to organize the TED Days. I love those days as a staff. Like, that is one of our favorite times. It has brought us together so much. It's changed our region positively, and I enjoy having those days quite a bit.
That's good, Sam. We'll have to remember to pass that on to folks. Yeah. So we have probably what we need to do is with the TED is make sure that people know this is where it's coming from. Michael or Ribs.
So I just wanted to piggyback off that. We've also had 2 of the TED Days, I guess. We've had 2 of those happen here as well, and everyone has loved them to the point where even now it's been about 4 months since our last one, and people are still talking about the things we did and how they had such a good time, and just the fact that they can get out and kind of get closer, because everyone's like, oh yeah, this is a way to get out of the trenches and kind of bond and stuff like that. But we're all just getting to have fun with each other and not just there to do collections and then leave.
That's fantastic. Are
you saying TED, TED days?
So technically it's team empowerment days, so they're just TEDs. Otherwise, you're saying team empowerment days, but yeah, TEDs. Yeah. Tom or Thomas.
Good morning, Cody. Actually,
Cody, that's
you're good. You'll get there. I had a question, and don't remember what it was. Yes, I do. Okay, so the TED Days. I had this asked a couple of times, and I loved the idea. So for the TED Days, the first time we did it for your whole local state team, right? And everybody got together. And then the second one was just your local team, your big site or your collections team. Is that how it's going to be done every year? A huge, massive group, and then the smaller one with your local team? And if so, I hope so, because that was pretty awesome and the best way to group us together and be a family, big team. Just saying.
Yeah, I'll
I
jump
vote
in.
yes.
I'll jump in and answer that and say it's actually a local decision that's not mandated by us at National. So we have just asked each group to host two TEDs, Team Empowerment Days, and it is kind of up to the local teams to figure out how best to do that. I will say that the fixed sites, for those of our fixed site friends, this past year we had just one, as we were trying to figure out how to ensure that we have enough platelet collections for our hospitals given the shelf life. And the team is working on next year having two in the fixed sites. So that is likely to change. I think there might be a formal announcement coming in a day or two.
Good to
So
know.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice.
yeah, and I saw Joe put his hand up quick and then put it down, and I suspect I might have stolen his thunder on that.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that with the fixed sites, it is at the fixed site level and not the bigger like region team. For that very reason of platelet availability, we need to make sure that we have enough coming into the manufacturing locations to support platelet collections, and we can only have a few per week, and they scatter them throughout the region to kind of balance that production. So we will get the two, but they are at the fixed site level. Both of them will be at the fixed site level and not at a region level.
There you
Thanks,
go.
Joe.
Excellent. Anything else? All right. I'll forge on here. So I'm going to talk about, I've mentioned a number of things around just science with culture. The cool thing is there's actually been a lot of great research on compassion as well. And I'm going to talk about two different cognitive biases. And now, just for those who aren't aware, a cognitive bias is different from a social bias. So a cognitive bias is what's baked into our brain for survival, for just to quite make things quick and easy for us, things like that. Whereas a social bias is, and everyone has the same cognitive biases, all human beings do. Where social biases depends on where you live. You might have a bias toward one type of food or music or whatever it might be based on the way you grew up. So social biases are a different kind of thing. So we're going to share some of these things and how to use compassion to overcome some of the biases that tend to stop teamwork. And of course, culture, damage culture. So we'll talk about sort of pro-social, pro-culture behaviors and anti-culture behaviors. Some are helpful and some are hinder us. So a little bit in terms of the science, if you go way back, our ancestors survived because they were constantly scanning their environment for friend or foe, right? So you just didn't know if you saw somebody who looked different than you from a different tribe, are they going to help you or are they going to hurt you? And that's still the case to this day. Our brain is constantly scanning that. And even the people that we love the most, we can change on a dime. So that's the thing. This part of the brain, these biases are so quick. Some people would say as fast as 1/60th of a second, like as fast as you could blink. Boom, you can be filled with the biochemicals that make you suspicious and fearful and angry or whatever. It can put you into either offense or defense mode instantly. And I mentioned that this is true even with your people that are closest to you. So think about the one you love the most and they say something that sounds like it might be insulting your intelligence, or don't like your clothing style, or whatever it might be, then all of a sudden we get all mad and think negative thoughts about them, and maybe even say negative things to them. So it's part of the human condition. It's part of who we are to have these. And because of these things are so focused in us, it really does mean that we want to look to both experiences as well as good research to say, hey, what can we do around this, right? So one of the things they learned is that the human brain evolved in groups, because if someone was not part of a group back before we had modern technology, they died, right? There are other animals out there that are always bigger, faster, with bigger teeth. So we had to work in groups to survive. And because of that, we got good at cooperating in large groups, and we cooperate in a level that no other animal does in terms of globally. Like if you think about just this pen right here, probably over 10,000 people had something to do with this pen getting into my desk, right? From the manufacturing of all the different ingredients, the factories, the shipping, the salespeople, everything, all over the place. Tons and tons of cooperation. So because of this, the way we group living shapes our brain structure. So that means that we have cravings. We crave to be belong, and we also have a lot of defensiveness when we feel threatened about this. So one of the things that's really important for us, any kind of leader, so whether or not you're an official leader or you're a frontline worker, but if you're on the culture team, you're now you're a leader in the culture. And for those of us, and for all of us, we do best when we motivate a sense of group identity. Now, in my 36 years of doing this, I've worked with all kinds of organizations, and none can do this as well as the Red Cross, because the Red Cross has such an amazing mission and so much power to it. What Robin was saying before is so true about, right? It's hard work that you feel good about at the end of the day, because you care so much about the mission and saving lives, and not to mention just good people. I mean, I was talking to Sam while you were in breakout groups about how I always loved doing these culture team meetings, because it's like you're the cream of the crop, like the most caring, passionate people join these things and are suggested for these things. So it's very exciting. So we have to, as leaders, we want to really be entrepreneurs of identity, like building on what that means to be a Red Crosser and trying to make that more and more positive all the time in various ways. So here's some definitions, which I find really interesting. So compassion, according to some neuroscientists, is empathy plus action. So that's thinking, that's powerful, right? So empathy, of course, feeling for other people, what their going situation is, and then compassion means you act on it. And if you think about this, everything I talk about compassion now applies to you every single day, because the Red Cross is compassion incarnate. It's exactly what you do. Every part of the Red Cross sees a challenge, a problem, an issue, and acts to help out. And of course, yours, all the stuff we do in biomed is saving lives, right? It's a big, big, big help. Or, helping people with cancer, helping people with all kinds of disorders and things like that. So it's really just so many things. And a bias is more sort of an expectation state. Because of some social biases, like racism and sexism, things like that, we tend to think all biases are bad, but most biases are just sort of cognitive bias, just get us through the day. But the more you learn about some of these biases, you also start to see why sometimes people have these confused negative social biases as well. That's part of why I wear this shirt. I don't know if you can read it. It says, "One race, human." We're all one race. Trying to help balance out that bias for other people. Okay, so some variations of compassion, right? As we said, empathy is understanding someone. And there's two forms of empathy, right? One is get how you feel about something. So let's just say, a friend of mine, Carl, says to me, "Hey, Bob, I just found out I have cancer, right? And I have not had cancer. So I can't empathize on the same level emotionally, but cognitively, I get it. 3 of my sisters have had it. I have some friends who have died from it. I've been around a lot of it. So I can, wow, so sorry to hear that, dude. That's terrible, right? I can be there. What can I do? Right? That's the action. What can I do to help? Can I, bring you food, take care of your kids, feed your cat, whatever you need. So you can either understand it because you've been through it, or you can understand it because, yeah, you get it. It makes sense. Right. So it really obviously means helping when someone is down. Right. We all do better when we know that people care. When we're having trouble, we're going to help. That's just from primal age, back to the tribal ages when we lived in the bush, to now. This is the case for us. And so what I would love to do is just in the chat box, just to kind of get your sense of this as well. Where do you see compassion at the Red Cross? Could be to colleagues, to donors, whomever, volunteers. Where have you seen an example of someone being compassionate?
So we have a lot of different things here because like our team here in like the Madison, Wisconsin area is usually pretty tight, and we have things where like we have a person here who's actually pregnant and she wasn't in the greatest situation, so we are having like a baby shower for her this week, so this way we can all get together and celebrate her and kind of be like, hey, you got a whole family here of people who are trying to keep an eye out for you and make sure that everything goes pretty great for you and that we're all here for you when you need it. So we're all doing that, and like also throwing a party for someone who's leaving because we don't want to see them go, but we want to we're also making sure that they know that we're going to miss them no matter what.
That's fantastic. And it's great because you're also hitting what I was just about to talk about, which is that I think it also means authentic celebration, which is what you just talked about, right? So you understand their joy, you empathize with their happiness from whether moving to another job or having a baby, whatever it might be, and yeah, happy with them about it. That's fantastic. Yeah, and so many good things here. And I love what Robin wrote, that all of you being here is compassion, right? Because you're empathizing with the need for the wanting to make the culture even better, and you're here to do something about it. Wow. That's right. Cody, you talked about this last time a little bit too. Would you be willing to share it again today? Because I think it's a really good, that staff helping a habit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So with the habit, words today, the helping, oh my gosh, the habit campaign.
You're among friends, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Good.
So the idea was making certain things or things that we do naturally a habit. One of the things was helping. So all across Montana and Idaho, especially for my local teams that I see every day or I hear about, is the helping portion. And I'll use the word stress. I've stressed throughout our local areas that helping should be a good thing and should be offered and should be, if you see it, do it, right? See something, say something, see something, do something. And if you have that extra hand that you can, or the knowledge, or to teach someone, or in any aspect, if you see where help can be used, make it a habit to do it or offer it. And it's been awesome to see in different sites that I've seen now, is you just kind of witness it, and it's kind of an awe thing to see, and I'm loving that.
Nice. That's great. And speaking of being helpful, for some of you who prefer to be called by a different name, I don't know how to do it, but I know there is a way to go. You have to ask someone for help, but so I know people have changed to their name so they get the nickname, so people can call you by your nickname. So yeah, some tech person. I saw a hand go a second ago. Who is that?
It was
Ribs?
me. I had another story,
Okay.
but I don't want to share too much, so I'm just gonna hold off.
Okay, all right. We'll catch you on another one then. All right. Sounds good. Thank you. All right, so this is a big deal. And if you think about it, the blend is the best, right? So in order to survive, we need the first type of compassion. In order to thrive, we need both. So that's true all across life. That's the great thing. Most of the stuff I'm going to teach you today is not only really helpful for improving culture at the Red Cross, it's helpful for improving culture at home, in your own mind, with other groups that you belong to. You can bring these concepts, these tools as well. It's one of the things I really love about sharing them, is hearing people's stories about how their family dynamics have gotten better. Particularly the next one we're about to do here. This is one of the ones that I designed this about 17 years ago, from research from positive psychology on gratitude and the impact of gratitude, and also the impact of being able to share together. And it's called The Highlights, and hopefully everybody here has heard of it and done it multiple times. If you have not, then you were probably one of those cool spots. We're trying to warm up and get more culture stuff involved here. And so, like, for example, you can share about a project that you're working on, before you talk about the challenges. And this, one of the cool things that this does is it also changes the brain chemistry. When you share positive things and you hear other people say positive things that you can empathize with, it changes your brain chemistry in such a way that you tend to be more creative. It's pretty cool for the geeks. Mild to moderate positive affect. In other words, good mood. Feeling good tends to release the kind of biochemistry that makes you feel good. When you're stressed out, the cortisol sharpens your focus and you lose your ability to think more laterally. So this can be really helpful for teams or for team building. You can share your personal highlights, and it's great for strengthening families as well. I've heard some wonderful stories of people come back, talking about doing this every night with their families and how they just are so much stronger now. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So let's practice this here. I'm going to put you back into those groups again, and hopefully everybody will be able to get in to a group. And so this is all optional, right? So you're invited to share a highlight, and it can just be anything from your personal life that you want to share that you think is appropriate for work. Could be good news about a family member, or just a good meal you had, or a nice walk in the woods, or a particularly good video game you played the other day. Whatever it is for you, it can be big, small, doesn't matter. It's all good. So let's see, you got groups of 4 or 5. So we're going to give you about 6 minutes and 12 seconds. As soon as I can find the rooms break, there we go. All right. Have a great time, everybody. Welcome back, folks. Welcome back. Hey, throw in the chat or raise your hand. What was it like to share highlights with each other?
Inspiring.
Yeah. Is that Shayna that said that?
Yeah.
Yeah, what was it?
Tempest told an amazing story.
Oh, fantastic.
So that was really awesome.
Isn't that nice? Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Ribs?
It's really good to hear like things, like different things that other people enjoy, also like stuff that makes people feel like they have like their highlights, and like what's good for them and what makes it so that they see something like positive in their day, that their life, whether it's something coming up or something that has happened already, whether it's distant or more recent.
Yeah. Nice. Jennifer?
Good morning, Bob.
Morning.
It's a really nice way to get to know someone,
Yeah.
because you never know what is going to be a highlight for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a brief little glimpse into them and who they are.
Nice. Yeah, it's so good. So it also helps people realize you're a friend, not a foe, right? When they're scanning. And we're going to talk about the different biases and how this activity helps with both of the biases we're going to be talking about, as well as many others. And it pulls people together, and no surprise, again, once we feel connected, we're more likely to help each other, be there for each other and all that, right? Be compassionate, essentially. Quenta, I hope your arm doesn't get too tired holding the phone.
I know. I'll be okay though.
Okay. Hope you can find some place to set it.
That was my issue because I was here last week and I didn't know it was a longer class, so I had the phone in my hand the whole time.
Oh, okay.
And now that I knew I had to be in this one, I'm like, there's no way I'm holding the phone in my head the whole time. I'm going to my computer.
Yeah. We're going for several more hours, Conquentus. I don't know if you can put in earbuds or prop it up on something.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure something out here now. In my den. So I'm gonna brainstorm some things real quick here once my hand starts going out.
There you go.
Do you have like a tablet or anything you can place on on a table or something in front of you that has a camera?
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah, I think I have something that I can, put in front.
So I know that was a thing they were using for like the Red Cross training, is they were giving out like iPads with the cameras that you can just have in front of you. And since they had the cameras, you can also join teams that way.
Oh. That's cool.
My husband is scolding me now, saying, "I told you to hook it up to your laptop."
I told you so. All right, folks. We'll jump back in again. So the highlights, it picks one's mood up, right? So matter of fact, I just briefly did a 2-minute video chat with my fiance, and she said, "You look so happy. What's going on?" And I think it was just coming off of hearing people talk about the highlights. So it's a real mood lifter, and it builds connection with people. And if you're trying to do it with someone who's never done it before, maybe the first time or two might be kind of awkward, but after a while, people start to really get into it. There was a CEO of a company, and I was teaching her company this activity, and she did it with her son every day, and he loved it. And then she had to go away for 3 months on a business trip. And she gets home, and one of the first things he says is, "When are we going to start highlights again, Mom?" And then they jump back into it. And she emailed me. I hadn't seen her like a year and a half, and she emailed me just to tell me that story. That's great. All right. So a lot of impact here in a lot of different ways. So let's dive a little more into some of the compassion research, and I think you'll start to understand more and more why it's so helpful. So one of my favorite neuroscientists, his name is David Rock. He describes compassion as the power tool for energizing leaders and teams. It makes so much difference. And it's really cool that it makes both parties feel better. Right? That's really nice. And empathy is a great thing, but empathy alone can lead to burnout, right? So particularly in this day, we did not evolve to be aware of 10,000 issues around the world simultaneously, right? Hearing floods here, starvations over here, war over here, et cetera, right? It's so we can easily burn out on being overly empathetic with so many different things. So what I get from the research from my own experience is that if you can pick like 1 or 2 things to be compassionate about, empathize with, and act on. So obviously you're doing it at work, which is great. And if there's something else you can do that with, to volunteer with, that tends to actually not only not burn you out, but build resilience, as the research shows, which is really important and necessary. It actually develops our brains. So for those of the geeks among us, our brain is divided into different cortices, and the cortices actually get stronger and thicker, whereas constant stress makes them smaller and less connections. So compassion makes them bigger, makes more connections in our brain, which just makes us smarter and more capable of managing things. No surprise, of course, compassion builds relatedness. That's an obvious one. One of the cool things they find, speaking of friend or foe instinct, right? Just being labeled a team member tends to increase empathy. So this is a big thing we'll talk about moving forward, is more and more trying to remember that remind ourselves and others all the time, everyone that works in biomed is part of the same team. You're all about saving patients' lives. Because the way our brains work, we tend to forget that sometimes, and we'll talk more about why that is. So the first of the 2 biases I want to talk about is what's called the negativity bias. And the negativity bias is part of our brain survival mechanism. And it's what it is like I said before, we're scanning for threats, right? But so negativity bias does that for everything, not just people, like the friend or foe. But friend or foe is part of that negativity bias. We're scanning for threats. We often see threats even when they don't exist. Or if something negative does happen to us, we tend to amplify how big of a deal it is in our mind, because of that, the way our brains work, negativity bias. So I'll give you an example. Let's just imagine that Tempest and I are in a meeting together, and after the meeting, I say, "Wow, Tempest, you did a great job in that meeting. You gave so many great ideas. You include everybody really well. That was fantastic. I just want to say that you did accidentally call somebody by the wrong name once." Now, of those pieces of feedback, Tempest, which one are you going to be thinking about afterwards the most?
But I called someone by their name.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. That's what that's what our brain does. It grabs the negative thing. You're like, oh, now what do we think about that one? You might even forget all the great stuff that I said, right? So the negativity bias is really strong that way. Things tend to last, negative impressions last longer and feel stronger than objectively equal positive things. So there's a bunch of negatives that happen from that. So when we have that, our brain goes into this. It floods our brain with cortisol, makes our thinking rigid and narrow, when it's really strong, when there's a lot of it, right? Kind of binary, simplistic views like, oh, the world's on fire. As a matter of fact, I was sitting down having a conversation. I was in New Orleans a few years ago with a buddy. It was this gorgeous sunny day. We're in a park. There's people walking around with ice cream and dogs and frisbees. And he's like, the world's on fire. And I was like, all right, there are some bad things happening for sure. And the world is not on fire. Look around us. There's a lot of love and goodness too. So it's not one or the other. It's not everything is great or everything's bad. But that's what happens when the negativity bias is active. It's really hard to think clearly. And we tend to see any kind of change as threatening and resist it. That's part of why, like I said before, about 20% of people resist even changes that are positive to us. But also, what is activating, you tend to see other teams or other people as threats versus friends or part of your connection. So this is it's a necessary part of our brain. We can't live without it. It helps us look for danger. Like if you're crossing the street, it'll quickly yell at you, "There's a car," and give you energy to jump out of the way. Things like that. So it's necessary. The problem is it gets activated equally with the same intensity in social situations as it does actual life and death threats. Because remember, the primitive part of their brain associates being alone as a life threat in that sense. Not alone by yourself in a room, but being out in the woods, without help or without protection, things like that. So it's a really intense thing, and it can feel very, very overwhelming. And people with anxiety disorders or PTSD, things like that, tends to have like this negativity bias on steroids. It's a tough one. So it's important for all of us, whatever our situation, however intense strong our negativity bias is, to be able to rebalance this, see things calmer. Like when I help my friend say, hey, I understand that what you're talking about climate change, I'm very worried about it too. And we can also enjoy the beautiful day today. And he's like, okay, you're right. Do what we can and still have a good life. We don't have to be panicked all the time. So there's many different ways to rebalance the negativity bias. I'm going to tell you one way that I do it, and then I'm going to put you into groups to chat a little about how you do it, what works for you. Because obviously you wouldn't be on this call unless you were already good at doing this, to a certain degree at least. And so I thought, like when I first started my career, I was a pretty insecure, pretty wounded guy. And if anyone gave me negative feedback, I'd get really defensive. Even to the point of like shouting them down. I was very, very, very sensitive. And, I had to do a lot of work over the years to kind of heal myself, so I wasn't so sensitive all the time. But the challenge is you can't really function very well in a work environment if you can't take feedback. And I was getting negative feedback on the way I handled my negative feedback. So one of the things that I started doing to rebalance myself from feeling like I was being attacked was to focus, listen to them and focus on what's the gift in what they're saying. What's something valuable I can use? And let me just ignore the other exaggerations. Particularly once I learned about the negativity bias, I realized a lot of times their exaggerations when they're giving feedback. It's just their negativity bias. Don't take it personally. It's just what's going on in their brain. So look for the gift, ignore everything else, and thank them for that piece and move on. And that helps a lot. At first, it was really difficult, but now it's become a habit. I do it without having to think about it. So this is a big deal. So we're going to put you in your breakout groups again, and these wonderful, nice people that you've bonded with. And if at all possible, if you can turn on your webcam when you're in there, it's even more powerful in small group setting. And just share, just very briefly about something that activates your negativity bias. Don't go into a long, complaint about it, but just a little bit. And then what do you do to rebalance and learn from each other? Welcome back. Welcome back.
Oh, that's a good one too. Oops, we're back.
We're back.
Yeah, this is Beam Me Up, Scotty, Erica.
Sorry.
There's always that funny moment when you're still talking. Like, oops, I'm now talking to 50 people. So who do you want to share? Can we hear from a couple of people? What do you do to rebalance yourself? Yes, please, Ribs, go ahead.
I was mentioning this in the group that I was in. I usually said that if anything that's negative that happens either at a drive or before a drive, after a drive, anything like that, something I do is I come back home and play a tremendous amount of video games.
Okay.
And just kind of any sort of aggression or anything like that, I would just play in the game, it's gone. Whether I have to solve a puzzle or shoot a digital character or something like that, it's just it kind of just all goes away when I'm like, you know what, it's just not real. It's gone. It's a later today thing. It happened. It's over. I don't have to worry about it.
There you go. Yeah, a lot of issues can just let it drift away at that point. That's great. And is it Caroline? Did I say that right?
Yes, Caroline.
Excellent.
Me and Nazia were talking about this. Working out, moving our bodies, it always just puts me in a good mindset. I switched from my chair to my walking pad, and I'm already just like 10 times more energetic and positive, and just being able to let the negativity out like through moving.
Nice. You're inspiring me. I've been thinking about getting one of those for ages. I'll have to do it soon.
The best.
Understanding
it's the best.
It, yeah, that's great. That's great. And Erica, did you have your hand up for a little bit?
Did my team, we were also talking about like not taking things so personal, and then Jennifer also mentioned how maybe she'll read something and not really like what she just read, so walk away, take a little break real quick, do something else, and then come read that message again, and just now you got a different mindset.
Yeah, that walking away is really helpful. Particularly if you can do something physical, as Caroline was talking about, because what happens is we get the cortisol and the adrenaline released in our brain, and our brain wants to fight or flee, right, run away or something. And so to be able to walk away and let it cool down, and once the cortisol has come out of our system, we can now see it much more clearly, right? That's great. And Nadezhda, did I say your name right?
Yeah, you did, Bob. Thank you. I go by Nadia.
Nadia? Okay.
Yeah, Nadia.
Nadia?
So yeah, Erica and Carolina were in my group, and we talked quite a bit about physical exercises and staying active and releasing stress this way, because first, it's absolutely brainless activity when you get on that treadmill or you start lifting the weights, and your mind gets that rest that's needed after the stress you experience during the day, or maybe you are carrying over from the whole week, and it's Friday and you just need to go and punch something. So that's a good good way to get rid of all the stress you have. And I truly believe that happy body creates the happy mind. So that's what we were talking about in our group, and I'm glad a lot of people support that. Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Emily.
This kind of just triggered a example that I had one time. I had a really anxious trainee at one point, and she was really in her head a lot. One of the things that we did constantly was just shook it out. We would go to a different corner of the room or go to the bathroom or something, just kind of relax for a second and then just shake it out. Like she would have like the jitters and stuff. Yes, exactly like that. Just shake it out. We'll get through it. All we have to do is just shake out our feelings and we'll be okay.
Nice. That's a nice way to get the physical action going. All right, we'll hear two more, Shayna, then Jared. Go ahead, Shayna. Just make sure you unmute.
Okay. I like to go home and play with my dogs.
Oh, yeah. Dogs are the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I got a certificate in neuro leadership, and one of the things they talked about was maintaining your health and all this stuff, emotional health. And the two best things they found, two best habits, there's like a list of them, but the top two for dealing with emotional, essentially being emotionally healthy, is going for walks in nature and being with a close friend, right, who's compassionate. And so I like to go for walks in nature with a close friend, right? So get two for it with that one. It's really helpful. All right. And Jared, did I say your name correctly? Is that right?
Yes, you did.
Excellent.
I was thinking about like how the job sometimes becomes very monotonous, kind of routine. You kind of do the same thing every day, and that can get you into a rut. So I like to try to find things that are going to drastically break that kind of that routine. If I know like I'm expecting like a crazy busy drive, I'll like kind of like to do artsy craftsy things in my free time to unwind. So I'll make little trinkets and baubles to give to the staff on the day, so that yes, it was a crazy day. We had all these complications and it was a high school drive and this, that, and the other thing. Oh yeah, Jared made us these keychains, like it's always like a nice little like positive note to the end of the day. And I have had like staff like mention things like that. And then that's the last thing is this, oh yeah, and this positive thing also happened. So and I like to do that in various different ways, but that's kind of just an example I had. So
that's a great one. I've actually seen that listed as an antidepressant, is making things with your hands. I find the same thing. I like building things around the house. And I go through all kinds of blood, sweat, and tears, but when I'm done, I'm like, yes, so gratified. Did that. I did that. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, and like I said,
What you looking at?
Jared, you went back to mute while you're speaking there.
Sorry, yeah, it's like they're these little things, they're these little trinkets, baubles, but like I say, in the making of it helps me unwind, and then it also gives like a positivity to other people too. So I do like that.
Love that. That's a great one. All right. So rebalance the negativity bias is a big part of what we want to do as a culture team, right? We're wanting to help people out there rebalance their negativity bias. Of course, we need to do it ourselves to be able to help others. But I want to help people. And the thing too is the longer someone has had this activated, right? So sometimes we get into a chronic state of anger at the world or at our job or at our colleagues or whoever it is, or management or whatever it is, or another team. So the longer someone's been in that state, the longer it takes to kind of bring them back in. But I think somebody has either a baby or a cat. You should probably mute yourself. It's very adorable, though, to hear you talking. But all right. I want to tell you about another piece of interesting research. This was done by some positive psychologists, and they wanted to look at work teams, and they wanted to see they knew that talking about negative things has a negative impact on our brain, of course. They knew that talking about positive things, And by negative, it doesn't necessarily have to mean it's a bad thing to talk about, but just something that our brain reacts negatively to. So we do have to talk like, hey, oops, a machine broke. We got to fix it. You don't want to pretend it didn't break, but still it has a negative impact on our brain. And they want to see the difference between the impacts of that and the positive things that tend to have a more positive impact on our brain. What we call brain friendly, things that go with our brain and make us happy and motivate us in the right way. And what they did is they watched over 1,000 teams working on a real life challenge. They were working on the plans for the next year. And each of these teams was doing their meeting in a conference room that had video cameras in it. And so afterwards, the people, graduate students would go through and watch the video and track how many positive things people would say, things that had a positive impact on the brain, and versus how many negative. And they wanted to see if there was a correlation between their positive negative ratio and the performance level of the team. And what they found was there was a really strong correlation. So they found that the poor performing teams had, on average, they talked about negative things twice as much. So for everyone positive, they talked about 2 negatives. Now, I'm embarrassed to say that when I was a young leader, I used to do that. I thought I was being great by pointing at everybody's problems and tell them all what they were doing wrong, even if they already knew it. And once I read this research, I was like, okay, I need to stop. I'm the cause of my team's problems. I'm blaming them, but it's me. But they found that the average performing teams were about 6 times as powerful. So for 3 positives for every 1 negative. But that's still just only the average teams, right? You think 3 times as much is good, but the research shows you need over 5 times as much positivity to balance out for the brain. But the research showed that these teams, the high performance teams, range from about 5.6 positives for every 1 negative, all the way to about 11.4 positives for every 1 negative. Right, so pretty big range. But they also found out that if teams were overly positive, let's say 20-1 or something like that, their performance suffered. So positivity is great to a certain extent, but after that, too much of it has a bounce back effect. And you could probably guess why, right? Not taking it seriously. And the big thing is you're not facing the hard truths, right? If that's something is broken or something's not working, you have to face it. Then you want to get back to solving it. So that's a big thing. What we in the culture team do is really strive to have a good 10-to-1 ratio. So we face the hard truths, the tough feedback that we get from people, the complaints, and we say, all right, what can we do to help solve things? How do we make things better or even better? So we learn a lot of ways to talk in a more positive way, and we still grapple directly with hard truths. So what I propose is a 10-to-1 ratio. If you see that just popped up on the screen there. So aiming for about 10-to-1. The highlights gives you a 10-to-1 really easily. At the beginning of the call, I asked you to talk about, what you're excited about being on the team. So you got 10, a lot of them really quickly. So there's a number of questions you can ask or ways you can talk to get that 10 really fast. You don't always have to be the one saying all of the 10. I heard somebody talk about training earlier on. So this is really important, particularly if you met somebody new you're working with, you're training them to say at least 10 positives. And by the way, they have to be sincere. It can't just be fluffy things. They have to be real things that are real. But 10 sincere positives before you start talking about something negative. Because remember, the back of the brain is going, is this a friend or a foe? Is this a friend or a foe? And so by saying the 10 sincere positive things, they start to go, okay, this is a friend. Now, when you give them some tough feedback, they're more willing to take it because they're not feeling as threatened by you. So this is a big deal to think about from that. A 10-to-1 ratio. So some people most people are like me, that their ratio is too low, not enough positives. Some people don't like conflict, so their ratio is too high. Very few people are right in that range, but throw in the chat box. Don't have to tell us what ratio you think you are, but just throw in the chat box. What is something you'll do to get closer to a 10-to-1 ratio? What's something you can do to get even closer to a 10-to-1 ratio than you are now?
Be more intentional about trying to drive towards getting to that, closer to that 10-to-1 ratio. That's kind of how I was thinking.
Yeah. And what will you do So yeah, you have to have a
That's a
behavior.
good question.
Yeah, yeah.
No, that's a really good question. Yeah, I have to think about that one.
There you go. Yeah, you can read what other people are talking about. Yeah. So that's what the research shows, by the way, is you need to have a specific activity in mind. Just the intention is not enough. Yeah. Because that way you can move, you can act on it. Yeah, Emily, I think the science would support what you're saying there. She writes, I think starting each interaction with a positive starts the cycle. Happy to hear from you, nice to see you, etc. Sets the stage. Is what the neuroscientists call positive priming. You start with something positive, it gets the right kind of brain chemistry. Everything is more likely to go well after that. And I love a number of people talking about being generous with recognition, learning and moving the other direction, learning to be more comfortable delivering the message of the hard stuff. Yeah. And I like that, Caroline, never pass up that chance to give a compliment. That's one of my habits as I've developed that over time. Constantly looking for ways to give sincere praise. It makes everybody feel better. Yeah, Nadia says, I think you need to end with a positive as well. That can be really helpful, particularly if you had a tough topic, to walk away with a positive step you can take. Right? And the more specific, the better. Yeah. Very helpful. Good stuff, folks. All right. See, there's a lot of wisdom in this group. I told you there was. All right. So I want to talk about another negative bias here. So the negativity bias can activate and be activated by what's called outgroup bias. Now, outgroup bias is one of the few biases that has two sides to it. It's both in-group and outgroup bias. In-group, we feel connected. Outgroup, I feel disconnected. So in-group friend, outgroup foe. That's how our brains work. So that's essentially friend or foe is just a simplistic way of saying in-group or out-group. So the out-group bias, here's just a definition of it. This is one of those challenging things. Part of the reason I didn't today, but usually I wear a Red Cross shirt when I'm talking to anyone on the Red Cross, because if they see this, they're like, hey, Red Crosser too, right? So that, like, if I see somebody else wearing a Red Cross shirt or hat or whatever in public, I automatically assume they're a good person and will often smile at them or say hi or whatever. But the outgroup bias tends to have this, tends to get triggered very easily. And unfortunately, you can also see that some activists and some politicians purposely activate this to get people angry and not thinking clearly and be against another group. So it can be used really unfortunate in bad ways. And within a culture, it causes a lot of challenges, right? So lowers productivity, tend to mistrust other groups, whether it's other teams or other levels, even withholding resources. So this is like one of those examples where I've seen this happen, where somebody goes to a boss with a legitimate complaint, but says it in such a negative way that it activates the other person's negativity bias and the outgroup bias. So like, yeah, you people just don't get us. You don't care about us. We're doing this, whatever. And if the person isn't grounded enough, it activates their outgroup bias. And now they actually feel like, well, you're just a complainer. Why should I give you all those extra resources? So they can, and it feels justifiable. It's kind of intense. Or I've seen where someone cares, so the boss makes a change, and the employee says, "Oh, they just did that because they had to, not because they care." Right? So they're prejudging. They're not being able to take it in on face value. Which, by the way, sometimes they might be right, but for those times where the boss does care, they don't get the credit. So here's a number of other different things. I'll let you just look over that and think about where you might see that sometimes. And it's one of the saddest things, because you can see really good people justifying poor treatment because they have that bias is activated. I know for me, certainly that happens. I noticed that. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm thinking some pretty harsh thoughts. Must have my outgroup bias activated against that group or that person. It's one thing it says here, pushes us to promote lose-lose policies just to hurt an outgroup. So I've seen that in companies where they're mad at a group and they don't give them enough resources, or they change the policy, even though that group is integral to their success as well in the long run, but they're not able to think that way. Or you see some people will vote against something because they don't want somebody else to have something that helps them, because that They're like, I don't want them to get that, even though it helps them. So it's a tough thing in our brain that can cause us a lot of counterproductive behavior. So let's get off this topic here. We know we see these things happen. We see it around us. I'm sure you can think of examples already. But what we want to do is where as much as possible, replace this with in-group bias. And when that is activated, here's the good stuff. Think about which of these you'd like to see even more at the Red Cross. I see a hand up. Yeah, that's Shayna. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed with bias is work ethic bias.
Say more.
Our group, I have noticed, tends to treat employees that have the same work ethic as them more positively, where those who have different work ethics are treated like less of. And I mean, myself, I have a work ethic of, we process donors, we give great customer service internally and externally, and we come to work, we do our job, and we work as a team. And if some of our employees aren't seen like that, like they're working hard to not work, or they're a little bit slower at the procedure, or they take more time than what some people think with certain donors and things like that, they are treated lower, I guess, on the totem pole. And I'm not sure how to try and be a leader to change that type of bias within our group.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. So I think the bias itself is not the problem. I think that's actually a pretty healthy bias to have. The problem is the behavior of treating them as if they're lesser. And instead of seeing their potential, and that's the big thing, right? So I think most people, not everybody, but most people who aren't at that work ethic have the potential to get there. And they won't get there if they're treated less than. But they might get there if someone works with them and talks about why it's, why the pride it feels to work hard, or the good thing they're doing, or share their own best practices. So it's good to have a bias toward hard, good work, right? That's a helpful thing. The challenge is, to your point, if it activates the negativity bias, an out-group bias, we treat them as less than, it just makes the situation even worse. So good point. And by the way, it can go the other direction as well. Back when I first got out of high school and I was doing some labor work, I was just trying to get some coin in the wallet, and I was working on this construction job where we're supposed to clean up all the construction materials after other people had finished. And I was just chugging along, just working away. And the other guy I was working with said, "Hey, stop working so fast." And I said, "Why? Why should I stop working so fast?" He says, "Because you're making me look bad. I don't want people to think that I'm a bad worker." And so he physically threatened me after that. And I finally just look, dude, that's your issue. This is the way I need to look in the mirror at myself at the end of the day. So he was angry at me. He saw me as a threat to him. So we can go either direction. Anyway. All right. And by the way, thank you for raising that or sharing that, Shannon. Anyone feel free to raise a hand with questions or comments like that. So what situations could we use even more in group dynamics and donor services?
I think it's good that we form our own opinions of things or people, because I guess here in my region, it's like if one person doesn't like someone, everyone else is not going to like them because one person said X, Y, and Z. So I just like to take a step back and just make my own opinions, make my own whatever of the issue or the person that,
Yeah. There's something I often teach in culture trainings. We won't have time today, but it's called the chameleon effect, and how people often adapt to meet other people's expectations, right? It's part of why we're so social. And so having that expectation that people will rise up to a strong work ethic, and then talking in that kind of way tends to be far more effective than blaming or shaming, for sure. And And John Hodges wrote, folks remember how they felt at the end of an interaction much more vividly than anything that preceded it. End with a sincere thank you, and your next interaction is more likely to start better. Yeah, the research shows there's two things that people remember most from a situation: the most intense emotion during it and the end. Even medical procedures, they did an experiment where there's one procedure where it was pretty uncomfortable. I think it was colonoscopy type of thing. Yeah, where there's one method for doing it longer, but there's less intense pain. And even though it's longer, people almost always rate it as a better experience. So you would not think you'd want to have that scope in you any longer than you absolutely need to, but not getting that intense spike. So it's both that you want to lower the intense negative spike. So have a really good positive experience, and particularly the ending is so powerful. That's great, Jen. Yeah. So many good points, folks. All right. What are we doing with time? It is almost time. Okay. We got a few more minutes and then we'll take a lunch break. All right. So I'm going to share this, and then after the lunch break, we'll do a really fun game that activates in-group bias, and it also helps you get your 10-to-1 ratio. And it's a really cool thing. So, it's the opposite of out-group bias, obviously. And so the nice thing, of course, as we said before, you've got the Red Cross swag is really helpful for people looking similar. So I would say our bias also looks for physical differences and things like that. But it also is like, what kind of clothing do you wear? Do you wear the same kind of clothing? Do you like the same kind of music? Do you go to the same school I did? Anyone who can join us on webcam, that would be awesome. We also encourage it during the culture team meetings and squad meetings as well, just for future reference. It, no surprise, activates in-group bias more when you can see people. When the brain is less likely to get the negativity bias activated. And people are more likely to participate fully if they know people can see them. Then you're multitasking, whatever. All right. So, as I promised before the break, we're going to play a really fun game which activates in-group bias. So we're going to put you in your small groups, and you're going to try to find as many things that your group has in common that are not obvious in 99 seconds. So you want to go fast. Most people can get about 5 to 10. Most groups can get about 5 to 10 things. So when I say they're not obvious, it can't be, for example, we work at the Red Cross. We all wear glasses. We all have nice noses, right? Whatever. It has to be something that you can't see. Or it's not obvious. But it can be things like we've all been to California, or we all like fish and chips, or we all like hiking or playing video games, or whatever it might be, right? So it can be anything you want in common. Although I would recommend sticking to positive things that you have in common versus we all hate X. That actually has a opposite effect. Okay, so find as many things you can in common. And one tip too for getting a lot, and this is the same if you're trying to build rapport with somebody, is if you're coming up with something that you don't like, don't talk about it, right? So if someone said, hey, do you like calamari? I'm like, oh, I got sick on calamari one time. It was 3 days old and I shouldn't have eaten it, and I got sick. First of all, that's not activating in-group bias. Second of all, you're wasting your 99 seconds. So it's the same thing here. Try not to go into complaining. Just say, no, but how about shrimp? Damon, you look like you're on an alien planet. That looks really cool. So folks, what was it? What did you feel like? What was kind of facial expressions, and what noises did people make when you found things you had in common? Water? Yes. Yeah. Ribs?
It was positive.
It was nice to find positives about people. I felt like speed dating.
That's right. It's speed friending in this case. Yeah, Erica?
So I felt like it was super intense, but also really, really fun, all in the mix. We laughed the whole time, but we were
Yeah.
super productive.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so the smiling and laughing, those are those kind of feelings of delight and sense of connection. That's in group. That's in group. Isn't that great? When in group bias is activated, it's a really nice thing. Jennifer, I'll have in group bias with you. I don't drink coffee either. But which would be probably pretty scary because I'm pretty high energy without it. But yeah. Coquenta, I like it. Yeah, our group has a lot in common. Yeah, these are powerful things. So this is one of those just simple little things you can do on a regular basis. You don't always have to play the game, but just try to find it. So my question for you here, right? So you can build multiple networks, right? So some of us can bond over not liking coffee. Some of us can bond over liking coffee. I can bond with somebody else over liking hiking, or somebody else who hates hiking, but I can bond over them for enjoying lobster, right? Or whatever it might be. So this is a big thing, is make sure focus on the commonalities more so than anything else. And so in what situations can you use this game or another way of seeing commonalities to build rapport? What's something else you could do?
Talking in general. I mean, without talking, you don't learn a lot.
Yes, and certainly having a good conversation. But kind of back to David's point earlier on, you also need to be intentional about what you talk about. Because of our negativity bias, it's very easy to fall into complaining, venting, whining, right? That's a very easy thing for our brains to do. So purposely choosing to do highlights first, things like that can be helpful. Yeah, Anna.
Took the words right out of my mouth. I was gonna say we felt like we were almost cheating because we had a lot in common when we were doing highlights.
Okay.
That we were like, let's circle back to that. So you took it right out right when I was about to say it.
Yeah, that's not cheating. That's just knowing good knowledge. That's using your knowledge. That's excellent. Yeah. Yeah. What about meetings? Any meetings where you could play this game to kind of build that rapport quickly? Yeah, Jennifer.
I think any interaction, be it a meeting, an email, a one-on-one conversation where you're both coming to the table with different priorities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And knowing that you probably have the same end goal, you're just going to come at it from two different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. And Ribs, we have a good thing. We have something in common that's obvious.
Oh, was it the lack of hair?
There you go. Exactly.
No, I was going to say a good place to do this would be when we have our staff meetings for the mobile collections every month. It would be nice to have that as either an icebreaker, or especially since a lot of our team meetings introduce new team members on those team meetings. So it'd be a good way to kind of have them not feel so guarded when they come in and be like, hey, I don't know anything about what's going on right now, but at least they have something to connect to.
Yeah, that's a great example. Great time to do it. Help people connect fast. Yeah. And David?
Yeah, Ribs just took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say an icebreaker or use it in a team meeting of sorts. So
there you go. Yeah. And Ribs, I don't like to think of it as lack of hair. I like to think of it as having a very big forehead.
I like to think of it as the hair traveled south for me.
There you go. All right. More dad jokes to come, people. I love good dad jokes. All right. So good stuff here. So we've already done a couple things to help get your 10-to-1 ratio, activate in-group bias, calm down the negativity bias, right? So highlights, commonalities, being compassionate with people, all these things are very helpful. So now let's take a step back and look at culture as a whole. There's three major needs to really enhance a culture well here. And that is psychological safety. We need to activate in-group bias on a large scale, and we need to build inclusive behavior habits. So I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into that in just a moment. But first, I want to point out the reason why we call this the Cultivating Culture Initiative, the cultivating piece, is because it's like a garden. Culture is not a static thing or a machine. It's people. It's it's relationships. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a few different ways to doing each of these things that we will do. And when I'm done, I want you to let me know which of these do you want to do even more of to really be out there helping cultivate the culture. So for creating psychological safety, celebrating progress other groups have made. We're often very quick to celebrate our own or get mad at others, but to add this habit in of celebrating their progress as well really helps build culture. It builds connection between groups. This is a big one that really I had to work really hard on for quite a while, which is labeling behaviors, not people. So instead of saying someone's a bad person because they don't have the same work ethic we do, as we were talking about before, say, all right, well, that person doesn't work as hard or as fast, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to say that they're a lazy person or an uncaring person, right? So you can label the behavior that gives them a chance to change. If you label the person, now you've got a conflict. You've insulted them in a bad way. And one of the big things is make it safe to bring up new or controversial ideas, right? Thank people for their ideas. Thank them for bringing the contributions up. Tell them what you think about it or what you know about it. But try to make it safe. Don't go, you guys keep complaining about the same issue all the time. I said, yep, I hear you. In fact, later on, we're going to talk about another tool that you can use to really hear this well. It's very powerful for both calming the negativity bias as well as activating in-group bias. So speaking of that, the research is pretty clear. Positive common goals. The neuroscientists talk about common goals, but if you think about how we want to feel connected, and the positivity tends to inspire more creative brain science, put those together. So does anybody happen to remember our culture vision, which is our positive common goal for the culture movement? Now, there's a couple people that are currently on the culture team, so hopefully they at least remember. I'll give you a hint. The first word is empowering. All right, I will remind you then. It is
empowering people saving lives.
Oh, say it again.
Empowering people, saving lives, and saving lives.
Yep, you just missed the one in the middle. So you got empowering people, inspiring donors, saving lives. Yeah. But still, hey, that was better than anybody else, Allison. Good for you. All right. Yeah, so that's the goal we want to, that vision, that's what guides us, saying, hey, we want to keep empowering people, keep inspiring donors, and all of that helps us get even better at saving lives. So that's a wonderful positive common goal for us. A big one is including people. Now, you can't force them to participate. As we said before, we put out 2 idea gathering surveys. We got anywhere between 20 to 30 something % of people, at least people had the choice. We also been including people in Spirit Week, and the fun things like the highlights activity that week. There's many different ways we've been working on including everybody, and inviting people more and more. And it's part of the reason why every year we ask some people to cycle off the culture team so other people can cycle on, so we can include more and more people over time. And we'll talk about the champions later on, but that's a whole nother way of including even more people, another almost 200 people, I think. Now, just to get to the nitty gritty stuff, one of the key things we need is clear, easy to recall actions each person can take to help, right? The research is very clear on this one. And that's why I teach very specific things like commonalities, highlights, compassion, and tools we're going to teach later as well, because you need specific things you can go out and do on a daily basis to make a difference. I love the habit of help. Cody was talking about before, right? So they're making that habit. It's easy, like, all right, we'll just walk looking for, how can I help? How can I help? Right. That's a great, easy to recall action. Love that one. The last one, the Red Cross rocks at, which is the common identity swag, right? So the hats, the pins, all that stuff is huge. I should let people know too that all these slides, as well as the video that the edited down vision of the video of this, will be stored in the so we've got a donor services culture, cultivating culture team site, and in it one of the channels is about the culture team, and you go into the file section of that and you can find these slides as well as the video once it's done. All right, so now let's look at building inclusive behavior habits, right? Because you need to activate it, but you need to keep doing these things habitually, not just once in a while. As a matter of fact, sometimes when a culture, matter of fact, I've heard from folks within donor services that there's been a few attempts prior to this one at improving culture, and they kind of petered out. And that actually, if you start something good and then stop it, it actually has a counterproductive effect. Now people are like, see, nothing ever changes. You don't really care. When it actually came from really good intention, just didn't have a follow through plan. But all right, so now let's look at the habits, right? So this is the key thing. It has to become habitual. So you've got these common goals, communicating them regularly, whether it's, empowering people, inspiring donors, saving lives, whether it's, hey, let's just take care of our donors today, whether it's, hey, let's create the best possible schedule for our people or the best marketing materials to get the people in there. Let's get on the phones and get donors in, whatever it might be. We have all kinds, so many different jobs within donor services. But whatever your positive common goal, just keep talking about them. Keeps bringing it back, because our mind goes 1,000 other places, and we need that to refocus on what we have in common and where we're going. So we talked about clear, easy to recall actions, and what you want is a majority of the group practicing these actions, or at least one or two of them. Imagine if 80% of the people with donor services started, doing highlights more frequently, or commonalities, or later or is at practicing more compassion, right? That's the one you can use anytime, anywhere. The whole culture, as you see from those numbers at the beginning, the culture starts getting better and better. It's a wonderful thing, but it does take habits and it takes time to build these things. It's a slow process. Excuse me. And I'm curious on this last one. Why do you think we don't just celebrate the positive steps, but also the positive attempts? What was a guess says that? Why do you think it's important to celebrate positive attempts as well? Yeah, go ahead, Ribs.
I think I was second on raising my hand.
Oh, you're right, Shayna. I didn't see that. Go ahead, Shayna.
I think it encourages. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it encourages people to continue to try, even if they aren't as successful as they wanted to be. And it just encourages inclusivity. Did I say that right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And for the brain geeks among us, when we are praised for either our attempts or success, if people take it to heart, it releases dopamine in our brain, and dopamine makes us want to do something again, right? So Ribs, you're very familiar with dopamine, because that's what video games are all about, is giving you steady hits of dopamine. You want to do it again, you want to do it again. So sports, anything that you really enjoy doing can give you those, give you that dopamine. All right. And Ribs, did you want to add something?
I was just going to say that, like, even celebrating people's attempts are something that's like enforcing like a positive habit that somebody's trying to have, even if they're not there yet, including like when donors come in and they go, oh, sorry, I didn't pass my hemoglobin. Don't be like, oh, sorry, just come next time. I usually tell them, hey, you did the thing, you came in, you tried, and it's already, just getting your foot in the door is already that first step. It's kind of like you are already putting your mindset that you want to try this thing. Even if you haven't gotten there yet, you will eventually.
Yeah, like it's a heroic step even just to walk in the door. That's great. That actually happened to me. I was shocked because I always assumed my iron would be good. And I was so depressed, but the person was so compassionate with me about it and cheering me on and saying, hey, you just coming in here was great. I was like, oh, okay, thank you. Good point, because I'm walking away feeling like a failure, as if it was my fault. But yeah, so good stuff. Let's see. And Jennifer, I really like what you wrote. Would you be willing to share that verbally?
So I work with volunteers. That's the Department of Donor Services I work in. And often I'll have volunteers ask me, how did we do? How did we do? Because they get really invested. And so I've taken to connecting with our collections teams, both fixed site and mobile, and just asking, how's the day going? How you guys doing? And I'll look at their little boxes with the tubes in them. I still don't understand how they work, but I'm like, so does that mean you've collected this many? And they're like, no, it means we collected this many. And oftentimes they'll follow that up with, oh, we were still 2 under goal. And I'll look at them and say, but you collected 28 units we didn't have before we started today. That's what you guys did today. You collected 28 units we didn't have.
Yeah.
And it just kind of changes the mood a little bit.
Yeah.
And then when they go something ridiculous over goal, like 10, 14, 15, I'm jumping up and down and clapping my hands and acting a complete fool, celebrating with them that you guys had a really busy day.
Mm-hmm.
And look what you did.
Nice.
And that is awesome.
Yeah.
So just trying to help celebrate that. And if I know that there's a tough day happening for the team, I like to randomly also just show up with cupcakes.
Nice. The celebrating these steps is one of the single most powerful ways to enhance the culture across the board. And to be able to say, hey, we saved more lives today because we showed up. We helped raise enough money to keep the Red Cross afloat because we showed up, to pay for our salaries because we showed up, right? We did all these things. And yeah, we always love it when we hit a goal and we're still saving lives and making a difference. That's beautiful. Yeah. Shayna, what about you?
Is it Jennifer? I want to thank you for sharing that, because I try to pay close attention to our volunteers, because if we didn't have volunteers at mobiles, it would take away from our staff trying to help people register and, figure out how to work the tablet and stuff like that. So our volunteers are so important, so important. And this really focuses on the celebrating the positive steps, because if we didn't show up to this mobile, if we didn't have a staff, we might have not have collected 8 units. We might not have collected, the 20 units if we would have had to cancel that mobile. And I totally agree with you. It's fantastic to be over goal and everything else, but it's also fantastic just to be able to say, we had one donor that came in and we might have saved 3 lives. So I think that is so positive.
That's wonderful. And as Nadja says, the food always helps a lot too. So the treat you give, Jennifer, is really good. Yeah. All right. So let's look at this whole list of things. Which thing on here do you want to do? Well, actually, first ask you a question. Think about which of these do you see happening well already? Right. So Jennifer, you just gave a great example of that. And then throw in the chat box, which of these do you want to do even more of moving forward? I know for myself, I had to sort of work on one at a time, get good at one thing, and then get to the point where I was doing it habitually, and then gradually build up. Okay. So this is a big picture of, the kind of stuff that it takes. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into how language can affect us. As many people in the culture team have been saying for years, words count, words matter. Obviously, tone of voice does as well. But let's look at the words and what words activate in-group or out-group bias in different situations. And some are kind of surprising. Now, I want to say here is if we see that somebody's using out-group bias words, we don't go, hey, you're using out-group bias words. Stop that, right? That's activity more out-group bias. It's kind of like this woman runs this amazing program where she says the program is called Calling In the Call-Out Culture. So call people in to support, include them instead of yelling at them, right? So educate and help. All right, so here we go. The ones in red tend to activate outgroup bias. So, right, any kind of words that imply you're not in the same team. I was interviewing folks in different parts of the organization a few years ago, and one RDO said she doesn't like being called a business partner because it implies that you're not on her team. It's like, how about a teammate? That's what she wanted to be called. I thought that was really interesting. So business partner sounds good, but it doesn't always necessarily mean that it doesn't feel like you're together. She also liked the term line of service, which because she's providing a service rather than the line of business that some people use. So some people use business because you're having to think in a business-like manner. But speaking about line of service reminds people we're here to serve. It's not about profit, it's about serving. So it tends to be much more in-group activating. And obviously, any type of blame triggers outgroup bias. Even if I'm blaming, let's just say, Anna and I are having a conversation about somebody else, and I'm blaming that other person, it can still activate outgroup bias for Anna and that person, or Anna might be worrying about what I'm blaming her about when she's not around, right? So it can activate that. So blame tends to backfire. So what's really good is owning the challenges and responsibility to find the solution together. Right? I like what Jennifer's doing because if they're having a hard day, instead of yelling at them, she brings them cupcakes, right? That's saying, I'm part of this. I want to help out. That's a really great example. So really owning that, because it's constantly having to remind ourselves that all of donor services is one team. Truth is, all of biomed is one team, and getting the blood and getting it into the patient. But all of donor services is one team, so keep reminding ourselves of that is helpful. And this has been one of my big challenges the last, I'd say about 10 years I've been working on responding with curiosity and compassion. And I had a colleague mention that I should maybe try this more, which probably meant I wasn't doing very good with him. And I would tell you something, this was very humbling practice to start doing for me. It may not be for you all, but for me, it was very humbling because I tend to think of myself as very insightful. I mean, I'm paid to teach my insights and all that stuff. But I found out that about 70-80% of the time that I was judging somebody, when I paused, instead of judging, went ask questions from a curiosity standpoint or a compassion standpoint. About 70-80% of the time, I had been wrong. My judgment was wrong. I was like, darn, I'm wrong a lot. So it's much better to be curious than to judge. I also found that responding that way, even when I was right that they were wrong, they were now open to my input because I had been curious and compassionate. Whereas if I was judgmental, they would have gotten defensive. So these, one or both of these together is very powerful for activating in-group bias. Very helpful. Yeah, Shayna.
One thing that my shrink has been trying to teach me is that if you are trying to talk to somebody and you are wanting to point out something that you would like them to work on or develop or whatever, by saying the word you, immediately their brain goes to a defensive.
Yeah. Negativity
and to try and reword it so that it's more inclusive, like, we, or how can I help in this situation, rather than use the word you, and it seems like a blaming thing.
Yeah. Matter of fact, we're going to get to that in just a second, is using we, right? In some situation, right? So instead of just saying my job is to help you meet your goals, sounds like you're, it's using we instead of you. So good one. Yeah. And I have found too that, I'm glad you brought up your shrink, because over the years, the more therapy I've gotten, the less I get my outgroup bias and negativity bias activated. It's just like less and less sensitive. I'm able more and more to listen with curiosity and compassion. And one of the biggest things that we've learned that's really helpful is self-compassion is very powerful. There's actually some pretty cool research on that now, right? Empathizing with your own situation and acting to fix it. Because the way I was raised was like, just beating myself up. So having to replace those habits. It's really helpful. All right. So as Shane was saying in the research, use we instead of you. Not all the time, of course. You can't always do it, but like when you say, how are we feeling? That's kind of weird because they don't know how you're feeling, but you can say, how are you feeling? But how are we doing toward our goal? That's inclusive. How do we want to get even better at this job? It's even more, yeah. There's a researcher named Carol Dweck, Dr. Dweck, focuses on growth mindset. And one of the techniques that she talks about is just adding yet onto a statement that implies you can't do something well. So it could be, we just can't seem to hit goal yet. I can't seem to, learn how to hit, learn to get the kind of marketing pitch that's really going to bring in someone. I really don't get it yet, right? Whatever it is. So helping people realize that learning is an ongoing process. It takes time. It doesn't happen all at once. And it can shift them around to just feeling, can't do it, to got a possibility. And that can be helpful. Oh, let me back off on this one. Actually, this next one, I want to tell a quick story to help illustrate it. So I had this challenge for a while when I would come in to work with folks and I would tell people, hey, I'm here to help you become better leaders. But I noticed they were cringing when I said that. What do you think they took it? How do you think they took that when I said, I'm here to help you become better leaders?
That we
It was
bad in the
personal.
first place.
Yeah, they weren't good leaders, right? It sounds like a personal thing, right? And so I've been studying the neuroscience concept of priming, that if you say it in the right way or say the right tone, people take it better. So I was experimenting with all these different ways of saying this. And I was finding that most were not working, or they're not working some of the time. And then I found one word that works every single time. So I'll say it this time. Notice how differently it feels. I'm here to help you become even better leaders. Right? So what does that imply?
That they're already good leaders. So yeah, even better.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So just adding one simple word before the word better helps honor the experience they have, the qualities they have, the competencies they have, helps honor stuff. So it's the same thing. I love to build on what Jennifer was talking about before. It's like, hey, this is great. We got 98% of goal. How can we get even more next time? Right? So you're still celebrating the fact that you got it, 98% or whatever it is, or, whatever it might be. And how do we get our teamwork even better next time? Instead of saying it's bad or it's broken, no, it's got a lot going for it. How do we make it even better? So this one, now that you've heard this, you're going to hear people within the culture team using this a lot. It's one of the easiest ones to put into action, and it really changes the tone in a significant way. Just enough so it doesn't sound cold and judgmental to warm and supportive. It's really significant how much difference it makes. So, yeah, what can we do to get even better to achieve our common goals? All right, so which of these do you want to do even more of? See, I just did it. Which of these do you want to do even more of? Throw it in the chat or share out loud. Yeah, they're also important. And I will say that none of these are easy. Every one of these took a lot of practice and working with mentors and taking training classes to get good at all of these things. So it's part of why I'm hired, is to help guide everybody in doing these things and using these principles. Right? It's a very different kind of principle than we often use for things. The good news is the better we get at these things, they also become very, very handy for team building, for good leadership skills, all kinds of stuff. So they work for anywhere around 50 people. They're very brain friendly. All right. So I want to do a little exercise to kind of help us understand why we need each other and perception. Why we need each other's perceptions. So
which one was the most important?
They're all the most important. So who asked that question? Who was that? Shayna. Okay. So it really depends at the time, right? So depending on what we're doing, sometimes if we're focusing on, Like at the very beginning, it was activating hearts and minds, right? Come with a good vision statement, get people's input on all that kind of stuff. And at first people were saying, well, first we need to move into action and fix things right away. And I was like, look, here's the thing. If people don't trust you, they don't give you the right suggestions on what to fix. And if you fix it, they don't believe it was for the right purpose. So first we have to start building the warmth and the connection. Find like those are the ambassadors, people that are doing good stuff, create the good vision statement. And then we start showing that we can fix things over time. But we don't just fix things, we have to put new things into practice. So it's gradually over time. And shared ownership is one of those that builds and builds and builds. But we're constantly working on moving hearts and minds. Yeah. And the input gathering one of the things, we didn't really say this at the beginning, but part of how we choose who's on a culture team is we're looking for maximum representation of the whole of all of donor services, right? So we want people to represent different parts of donor services, different levels within donor services, different types of positions. So we want geographic representation. We want to make sure that we have people that represent different demographic groups. So we're hearing from newer folks that have been around a while, people with different skin color, different experiences. All these things come together to make the most rich, what we call a microcosm, to really do the best for everybody. Yeah. Okay. So this one, there is an actual right answer. Whereas the other one, it varies. All right. So this challenge. So I'm going to go to the next slide for 20 seconds, and then I'll move off the slide, and you'll want to write down how many Fs you think you saw on that slide. 20 seconds seems a bit long. I'm going to give 15 seconds. All right, hold on a second. Let me set my timer. All right, and go. And stop. Okay. So think about how many Fs you saw, and now I'll tell you the answer. The number of Fs in the previous slide is, drum roll, 7. There you go. You saw that, huh? I only saw 6 the first time I did it. I'll show you what we often miss is the set. So we often read it, and our brain, the word of is said twice in a row. And we don't see it because they're on different lines. So our brains tend to skip that. When someone told me there were 7, I had to go back and count from backwards, so I wasn't reading. So what happens is our brain has a habit of, this is kind of like a bias, sort of these little shortcuts it does. So you notice sometimes you can, even if somebody misspells stuff, you can still tell what they're trying to say, because our brain kind of just says, well, this is what they need. So it does it here too. This is what it meant. And it gets rid of the of without even telling us. So it's just one of those simple little examples of that, right? So we have these biases and blind spots, and we need helpful, respectful nudges from others. So we all need this. It is humanly impossible to understand what everybody needs in cross donor services. It's such a complex organization spread over an entire country. And having volunteered at a number of blood drives, mobile and fixed sites, particularly mobiles are some of the most challenging work situations with a constantly changing team, changing location. It makes it almost impossible to keep up a steady sense of team. There's just so many blind spots that we're not able to we're not able to see. So we need each other to do this. And we don't have to, on the culture team, we don't have to yell at people or blame people. We can just talk about it. Hey, this is how I see it. This is what you might be missing. Oh, okay. Thank you. So it really helps a lot. And many of these biases they're clumped in together called expedience, which just helps us get through things really fast. And people think that, well, as long as I'm aware of the bias, it works. That's enough, but it's not. You actually have to have things that offset it. And that's part of why I created the habit for myself of responding with curiosity, because I realize so many times I have a blind spot about what's going on. So I really need to ask questions to find out. So interesting stuff there. All right, so I want to introduce a really powerful concept. It's simple but very powerful. And a few of you, well, those of you, of course, on the culture team, but those of you who went through LEAD as well, you'll be familiar with this. Or if you're a leader, you've gone through any of my trainings. You have. But I had the good fortune many years ago to fall into just fall into doing improv comedy. And I just helped somebody out once with a show, and then I started doing it professionally for a while. And it was one of the few things that actually came easy to me, believe it or not, because most people don't think it's hard. But most things in life were very hard for me to learn. This one was pretty easy. But it also changed my life doing it, because there's this basic concept called yes and. And in improv theater, it's about looking to try to make everybody else on stage look good. You're saying yes to whatever they come up with, and then you build on it and you keep it going. And I just thought for a while it just made life more funny. But I started to realize, particularly because my mentor, he created an improv leadership course. And we realized over time that it's actually powerful. It's a transformational tool personally as well as in a culture. Because we're so tempted to just say no to things, or it's not going to work, or shut things down. Yes, and as we'll see, helps us actually to shift that around. Using this well helps us to get our 10-to-1 ratio, helps us keep including people more, et cetera, et cetera. But I love this quote too around from an innovation standpoint from this executive coach here. I'll let you read this. Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. So we can talk about it or we can experience it. So that's the best way. Just like with the games, you have to experience it to understand it. So one of the best ways to kind of help understand the power of yes and is to experience the yes and versus yeah but game. So I'm going to show you the directions, and then we're going to go back into our groups to play it. All right, so as soon as you're placing your breakout group, pick one person to be the storyteller and another person to be the responder. Usually what I do is maybe the person whose name is first in the alphabet goes first, unless they don't want to, in which case they just ask somebody else. So if your name is Aaron, Aaron, that's you. But yeah, so whoever's first in the alphabet, go first, or if you don't want to, ask someone else. But what that storyteller is going to do is talk about, tell everybody else about the best job that you never had for 99 seconds. So I say never had, so you're going to make up a job, pretend you had it, talk as if it was real. So it might be, for example, yeah, so I used to be really good at, I used to go out to asteroids in the solar system and mine them for diamonds and gold and rare earths and stuff. That's why I became a trillionaire. And so now I've retired and I work at Red Cross because I want to give back to the world. Or I can say, hey, yeah, I used to run a farm where unwanted puppies and kittens could come and live and be taken care of and safe. Or I used to travel around the world for free just so people would ask me my opinion on everything. And they pay for everything. It was fantastic. So whatever it is, just make up some job, pretend like you had it, and talk about the story, tell a story for it. And the person who's next in the alphabet has to, and this is a tough part, particularly for really nice people, you have to yeah but them 3 to 5 times during that 99 seconds. So for example, yeah, but it costs too much to get out to an asteroid. You couldn't make any money doing that. Or yeah, but there's no money in helping, sick cats and dogs or something like that. So you have to yeah, but 3 times. And everybody else watch and see the dynamic. What happens when the yeah, but occurs? What happens to the story and the energy from that? So everybody else watch, and then we'll come back and we'll chat about it. All right. Does anybody have any questions before we go into our breakout groups? Yes. Yeah. Ribs?
So is this a story for 99 seconds for all the people in the group? Like each person has to do it and somebody
Oh,
next. So like,
no,
is
thank
it
you.
all four of
Thanks
us
for
doing it, or is
asking.
it just one person doing it for the one
Yeah,
time and then we're coming out?
exactly. Just one person telling a story for 99 seconds. One other person, butting him a few times during that, and then I'll call you back. Exactly. We'll do another round later on where somebody else gets to tell a story as well, but this time it'll just be that. Thank you for asking. Other questions? Okay. And time to start popping out of existence here and existing somewhere else. Have fun. This is a fun game. I like that laugh you came back with. All right. As much fun as the game is, what happened to the story and the person telling it when the butts occurred?
Nothing.
Well,
Our storyteller was very confident.
Okay.
the only thing that it minorly did was just kind of derail the thought process.
Right.
And
So,
I wasn't even necessarily butting. I was more or less like just sidetracking.
Right.
So it took off of she had a very clear like path of where her story wanted to go. And so just by even just sidetracking just a little bit or focusing on other aspects of what the focus was, it tended to just kind of derail the conversation.
Yeah. And so, butting has even a stronger effect, I think, than sidetracking. But Anna, what were you going to add?
Emily said it exactly. She was in my group. The conversation got really halted, and the person had to think about what they wanted to say next. I was
Yeah.
the storyteller, and I kept not stuttering, but pretty much like halting. What am I going to say next? So
Right.
it got kind
Right.
of awkward, but it was funny. I went crazy.
Yeah, that's good. That's why we play it in a silly context, so we don't actually feel hurt by it. But it's a fun story or fun game there. Yeah, so it tends to have that effect, particularly if you but it strongly. The person ends up being on defense the whole time instead of being able to create what they want. They just have to defend. All right, so now we're going to do a second round so we can feel the difference. So this time, someone else can be the storyteller. Let's just say the default is the person whose first name is last in the alphabet. But if they don't want to tell the story, they can ask someone else to. But all right, so that person's going to do the same thing, which is tell a story about the best job that you never had. Just make it up, have some fun. And this time, actually, we'll let anyone be yes and you. So anyone can respond with a yes and. So for example, it might be, oh, that sounds so awesome. You ride dragons? Cool. Can I ride one? Or what's your favorite one? Right. So you can build, you can ask questions, whatever it might be. Nikki, what's your question there?
When I go to join a room, I'm alone, so I don't know if I'm removed from a room or what's going on.
You did go to a room by yourself? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I'll move you then as soon as we go. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah. Anybody else have that issue? Just let us know so we can help you with it. Thank you so much. All right. Yeah. So you're going to go into your room. The person whose name is last in the alphabet start talking about the best job you ever had. Other folks can yes and for the next 99 seconds. Any other questions? Okay. And let me just check on Monica before we go. Interesting. It says you're in room 1, but we'll put you in room 7. We'll try that. Okay. Everybody, have some fun. This is one of my favorite games.
It was more positive. It was less awkward. Like I said, until we got to the football part. But yeah, it was just ultimately it was more positive.
Nice.
And more inclusive. It got everybody involved.
There you go.
It felt more like you were contributing to the conversation than interrupting the conversation from the yes-anders perspective.
Nice. Yeah. Caroline says the storyteller is excited to share more. Emily, nicer flow, stories elaborated versus changing course all the time. Yeah. So it's a very different thing. And that's the thing about so a team that works together is essentially creating a story together throughout the day. What you're doing, communication, your input, your ideas, your thoughts, your moods. And so going back to people earlier today talking about being more intentional, you can use yes and to more intentionally co-create a story that's positive, that's got a nicer flow, where people are heard more. And yes and can be used in many, many places, but we're going to take a break now and come back and talk more about that and play yet another really fun, good practice game to build out those yes and muscles. When we come back, I'd love to hear from you ideas of where you could use yes and to include people and build up stories and build things up versus yeah, but, which shuts it down. Yeah, and once you've written yours, you can look around, see other people's ideas as well. Just yeah, it could be really powerful with family as well, right? So let's Sam, actually, you shared a really good example the other day. Would you be willing to share that example, what you do with your daughter around, I think it's around dessert or something?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I have a 5, 3, and 1-year-old, and I leverage this daily with my children, all of them. For example, anytime that I get asked 300,000 times a day for a snack when it is not snack time, I just say, yes, you can have a snack after you finish your meal, or yes, you can have, that cookie after you eat a banana and things like that. So not opening up hard with the no right away. It's the correct, it's just exactly what I intend, right? Which is, yes, you can have it, but you have to do this first, right? So just framing it in that way makes it feel a little bit easier to deliver. So
yeah, and how do they respond differently to yes and versus the old style?
Fewer meltdowns for sure, because they hear the yes, right? That's the first thing that they're receiving is the yes, and then the, okay, now what do I just have to do to get it, right? So
yeah, that's great. That's what I find is that there's similar to what you're saying, Sam, is the more I started using yes and I realized, there was a lot of conflict I was having that I was creating with my own words. I didn't realize it.
Right, that I didn't even recognize, like I was creating just in the way that I was saying things. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a simple but very powerful tool. And in business situations, anybody here who's been trained in want to share an example of how you you have used yes and at work? I'll share an example. What really helped. So I used to have a business partner, and he and I were working with this one company on some pretty top secret stuff. We'd actually had to sign a non-disclosure agreement and all this kind of stuff because it would actually affect stock price if the word got out. So, and as we're signing this, it's saying you can be fined up to $50,000 and spend up to 10 years in jail if you violate this. So my negativity bias was very active. And so Michael came over to me at one point while the people were in groups having discussions, and he said, "Oh my gosh, Bob, we should tell our other client about what they're doing here because this is really cool. They could really use the same kind of approach." And my negativity bias wanted me to say, "Are you crazy? Did you read the form? We could go to prison for doing that, right?" But instead of doing any of those things I wanted to do, I was practicing yes and. So I said, "Hey, I love your creativity. And how would we do that legally?" And it was so good because as he walked, he's like, "Oh yeah, good point." As he walked away, I'm like, "Oh good, I didn't have to kill his idea. He can go kill it himself." But he didn't. He actually answered my question. He came back 5 minutes later with a way to do it legally. And it was a very simple thing. You just had to change a few identifying factors and use it as a case study instead of say who the company was. But in my fear, I couldn't think that way. So using yes and instead of shutting him down, came up with a great solution. So that's there's so many different examples like that. Same thing with, all your suggestions here are fantastic, folks. All right, so we're going to practice again with another fun one. And this is one of those things that you really takes a lot of practice to get skillful at it, and ideally get to the point of habit. Sam, how long do you think it took before you were doing it without having to think about it? Like it just became habit for you with your kids?
That's a good question. I'd say it was definitely kind of something that I was having to practice for a while, but maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months to really like make it something that I wasn't even having to consciously think about, right? So I'd say definitely a few weeks to a couple of months of like consciously making an effort to do it before it just became innate.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. I did mine so long ago, I can't remember now, but it was, I think it took longer, but I was so bad the other direction. It took me a long time. All right, so this next really fun way to practice and build this skill is the yes and one word story game. So this is a blast. In this one, it's good practice here. So just in alphabetic order by first name. I'm going to give you a one word to start the story with, just to make sure it's funny and silly. And then the person whose name is first in the alphabetic order, as soon as you get in your group, you're going to add one word or punctuation mark to that story. So for example, I will use the word, we'll go with dragons, which I mentioned before. So the first word is dragons. So the person in your group has to then build on that. They might say fly. And then the person who's next in alphabetic order can add a new word like dangerously. And the next person can add exclamation mark, or whatever you want to do. So you just keep going, and each time it comes back to you, you just add one word or punctuation mark. And again, if you can turn your webcam on, it makes it so much better. And so when it comes to you, just remember, you can only say one thing. It's either a word or a punctuation mark. And if it comes to you, you don't want to say, oh, I don't know. Gosh, this is hard. I don't know how to do this, because that's not one word and it doesn't add to the story. So just like in a good culture, we want to add the things that add value and let the other stuff slide on by, not even say it out loud. So there's a good chance to kind of practice that and see how it goes. And the stories can be a lot of fun. You can go all kinds of crazy places with it. All right, so your first word is dragons. Let me just check in. Any questions? Okay, your first word is dragons, and you're going to start and building on that. See you in 3 minutes. Excellent. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Click the thumbs up icon if you had fun. Yeah, Ribs, what's up?
I'd like to mention that while doing that entire thing, I know we were supposed to go in a specific sentence and like a nice row, but I had a specific person on my team, not to name any names, Cheyenne, that made it specifically very difficult just because the words were kind of being thrown out there, and I had to think of stuff off the top of my head that I was like, I don't know what's going to happen here. It's just going to be a weird sentence. This is how it's going to go today. Somehow we end up with like flaming skates on dragons.
I love it. I love it. That's the funnest part, when the words go like, when the story goes places you don't expect. And I don't know about you, but every time I play this game, the word I have in mind, it never works. By the time it comes to me, it's always something else, right? So what's the most important skills in this game?
Listening.
Yeah, listening, isn't it? Exactly. So that's the same thing in good communication. Yes, Erica.
So apparently our dragon eats people because they're really mean.
There you go. Well, as long as it's only mean people, we're okay. Yeah, so that's so really being able to listen, and this is a big part of really good culture, is really listening and you building in, adding in, right? Intentionally adding words that make a difference, intentionally adding, content or comments, so you're building positively. So good practice, and it's a really good way to go after that. I know for myself, the more I practice, the better I get. So practice at home is really good. Sometimes during our culture team calls, we have practice sessions as well. Oh my gosh. So your dragons live in a cave in Minnesota, Jennifer. Okay. Well, that's great. All right. So let's look at yes and brainstorming circles, but let me think about where we are with time. 206. We're actually doing pretty well. All right. I forget, how much time do you need? Do you remember, Sam, for your piece?
I think it's about like 45 minutes to an hour, including like the brainstorming afterwards and breakout sessions.
Okay. All right. I think we're doing pretty well. But, all right.
Okay.
Okay. So, yes, and can be used for innovation, all kinds of good stuff. Yeah, Shayna.
I've learned I'd like to travel to some different locations to meet some of these awesome people that are on the call today.
Nice, nice. That's a great thing to learn. Yeah, so hopefully some of them you will meet. We'll certainly meet them virtually, and hopefully some physically at some point. So we've talked about using yes and for inclusion, for energy, for positivity, and it can really be used for innovation as well. Because a lot of times when people are trying to come up with ideas, someone will come up, how to solve something. Someone will say something, other people argue with it or say that won't work or we already tried it. And you waste a ton of time just arguing over maybe not even the best idea. But with a yes and brainstorm, it's a different method. It's where we can really get a lot of different ideas going. So what's going to happen is this time when I put you back in your group, any one of you can come up with a simple challenge that anyone here could give some ideas on. So it might be on training your dog not to pee indoors, or it could be about how to throw a good party for your team, for somebody who's leaving, for example. Someone mentioned that earlier on. Just be any simple little challenge that you want some ideas on. So someone throw out an idea, a challenge, and then just take turns brainstorming. And for the first round here, just for the sake of practicing, most of my yes ands, I don't actually use the word yes and anymore. I just more like, hey, I love that idea. What do you think we can do next? Right? So it's the same thing. I just didn't use the word. So, but for practice at the beginning, it's helpful to use the yes and. So when someone puts out a challenge, you go in alphabetical order. The next person in alphabet passed after the person who gave the challenge will say, you could do, let's just say the idea was about a going away party. You could gather pictures from over the years that people have gathered of this person and fun events and do a slideshow. Then the next person will say, yes, and you could do this. And they'll throw out a different idea. And the next person will say after that, yes, and you could do this. Because our tendency is to go, yeah, you could do that, but you should do this instead. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to push it. We want to say yes and let the person just get all these ideas and then choose it later, choose what they want to do later on their own. So practice it and just keep going around. And when it comes back to the person who gave the challenge, you also can throw out an idea. Yes, and I could do this. All right, so you just keep practicing, coming up with more and more ideas. Now, here's the thing. If it comes to you and you don't have any good ideas, throw out a crazy idea, a bad idea, even an illegal idea. Don't do anything illegal, but I'm just saying, we welcome all kinds of crazy, bad, wild ideas because it gets people laughing, creativity goes up. So it's very inclusive and also lowers the bar. So you can come up with a really bad idea and it's okay because people know we're asking for bad ideas. And you never know when that bad idea might be the brilliant breakthrough idea anyway. So this just kind of opens it up. So when it comes to you, just throw out some sort of idea. Brilliant, bad, doesn't matter. And then the next person just yes ands and keeps going. Any questions before I send you into groups to practice? All right, I must have said it pretty clear. Okay. All right, we're going to give you about 4 minutes and 9 seconds for this. Have fun. There they are. They're disappearing one at a time. Bye, Jana. I have to add sound effects because that's what I feel like. How many ideas do you think you got?
Lots and lots and lots.
That's great.
Fun, some exotic, some dangerous, some very entertaining. Yeah.
Sounds like a perfect brainstorm.
Oh, it was great.
That's it. That's the best brainstorm is entertaining. It's got people laughing, and you get lots and lots of ideas, right? So think about that too. If people are in that kind of mood, you're much more likely to share crazy stuff, things you might not have otherwise thought of, as well as, of course, the neurochemistry itself. I believe it's the endorphins that are flooding the brain that make you more creative. Although I heard recently someone say that may not be the case. Anyway, I have to double check on that one. You were talking pasta, okay? Yummy ideas, good. So I love the fact that we can use yes and in so many different ways to expand, to grow, to innovate, and it really makes a difference. I know for me, when I first learned it, I was learning it in some areas and then gradually learning to use it in many different areas. It really has been transformative in my life. This may surprise people, but before I learned this, no one described me as a positive person. High energy, yes, but with this and other tools now, most people consider me a very positive person. So it's big changes. I'm getting hungry reading these chats. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Sam to talk more about the squads and different things like that. And then after she's done, we'll do a couple more activities. All right. And by the way, Sam is our fearless leader. She coordinates the whole process and has since the beginning and does a phenomenal job. And she walks the talk beautifully. You take it away, Sam.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm Samantha Smith. And give me 1 second. My husband's working in the crawl space. I'm going to let him know. He's like right below me and being super loud. So I don't know if you guys can hear it, but he's like re-insulating my crawl space, which is wonderful. Okay. But I'm like, that's like a little bit noisy. So like, 1 second.
Yeah, I can hear it here, but still.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Did you notice how good she did the yes and? Yes, I'm going to take it. And first, I'm going to talk to my husband. And then we'll do this.
Thank you.
Smooth as silk.
A perfect real life demonstration.
Exactly.
So awesome. Well, thank you all so much. You've been through so much awesome content so far with Bob. So thank you, Bob, for kind of leading us through the first majority of today, actually. So my name is Samantha Smith. I've been with the Red Cross for about 10 years, and I'm currently the Donor Services Program Manager and have the pleasure of being the Cultivating Culture Initiative lead. So I'm going to pull up some slides and kind of talk you through kind of the need to know stuff related to this initiative. So let me pull those up. Yeah, I'm going to do it this way. So many ways you can just like do different slides these days. It's never like a one and done anymore, which is like a blessing and a curse. Because I'm like, well, which option do I want to go with? Okay. All right, let me pull it up in reading view. Okay. So if you are here today, you are part of our national Cultivating Culture team. So welcome. So here are just like 3 bullets, kind of high level summarizing what it means to be a culture team member, like as in that role. So become an expert in representing good culture here in Donor Services. And if you're here today, you're obviously already doing that. So just kind of continuing that goodness. To represent your department, region, and coworkers in the national culture team and contribute to various deliverables being developed to support the vision of this initiative, right? So if you're on the team, you're participating, you're providing feedback. In many cases, you're going back to your teams and kind of talking through like, hey, we're working on this project that's going to be launching in, 3 months, 2 months, whatever it is. What do you think would make it successful? What do you think we would need to know in our particular department, in our roles as frontline, virtual, whatever it is, to make it successful, right? So providing that feedback back up, kind of being a liaison essentially between your department and your region and the national culture team. And last but not least, to help make donor services even better. And the bottom left picture there is actually my first blood donation back when I first started here 10 years ago. So something that I like to always just kind of point out is that within the Cultivating Culture Initiative, we're doing a lot of great work. And outside of the Cultivating Culture Initiative defined, And prior to this initiative kind of having been developed back in 2022, there's a lot of other good things that are going on within donor services that I just like to kind of give them, their due acknowledgement, right? So we have caring communications. We have a lot of good work being done in the realm of DEI, a lot of leadership training, impact, all kinds of things like that kind of exist within donor services that kind of all fall underneath of the Cultivating Culture umbrella, but didn't necessarily stem from our Cultivating Culture initiative, if that makes sense. So a common question that I get is, what is the difference between a culture team member, a culture ambassador, and a culture champion? And Robin Carter did an amazing job this morning of kind of talking through some of that. So I won't go into it too much in depth, but here's a slide that will be provided to you guys after the call today. It's actually already been uploaded to that Teams channel, which I'll talk about a little bit more here in a minute. But feel free to reference it, steal it, share it with your teams as needed. But essentially, you can think of the culture team member role as a national role. So as Robin kind of alluded to, you can be a trifecta. You could be all of these things, or you could just be one of them, or you could be two of them, right? In any kind of combination. It's not necessarily that in order to be a culture team member, you will have to have been a culture champion and a culture ambassador, or any combination of those things. So culture team member, these individuals are identified by a director RDSC in partnership with their union leaders and, of course, their management and supervisory teams, right? But the culture team includes individuals from all geographies and departments and levels within donor services. So we have folks from frontline all the way up to Paul Sullivan actively engaged in this initiative and participating in the squads and the deliverables that we're working towards. These team members are contributing to these deliverables. They're engaged in at least one squad in addition to the Culture Thursday calls, which are every other Thursday. So we call it Culture Thursdays because essentially we start the day off with about an hour and a half long all team calls. So all members of the culture team are on this call. And then after that, it's going to be all of our squad calls, which when you hear the word squad, just kind of think of work group. It's essentially like a smaller work group that's kind of working towards one particular kind of subset of deliverables from this initiative. The culture ambassador, originally, as Robin mentioned, we had about 600 names submitted through our vision survey. And, future state is essentially going to be a mechanism for recognition. Individuals can be submitted through this form. Anybody can submit it. It can be a leadership to an individual to leadership, peer to peer, all of the above. And it's kind of an ongoing thing. This is going to be evergreen. It's not going to be like submit these names by X date. It's just going to kind of be an ongoing mechanism for recognition. And I'm really excited to kind of see that kick off here in the next month or so. And then culture champions. Many of you are culture champions. And if not, you probably hopefully know who your culture champions are. And if not, feel free to reach out to me and I can tell you who they are. But those culture champions are also identified by directors and RDSCs. They're a partner to leadership, kind of working arm in arm with the directors, RDSCs, management level individuals on supporting and building good culture within their respective teams. So I think of it more as like the local mechanism for deepening kind of all of this goodness that we're kind of trying to cultivate at the national level. And they participate in one of 2 monthly calls. So different calls than what national culture team members participate in. So objectives. So these are some of the same key objectives that Robin went through this morning. But what I wanted to talk about with you a little bit more specifically today is the squads. So this is kind of helping to map out which of the squads we have on the national culture team and which of the key objectives they are supporting, if that makes sense. So for the first one, that making customers experience we provide to our donors, each other, and stakeholders even better. A lot of the work that the Coherent Squad, Ideation Squad, Comms Squad, and Mentorship Squad are going to be working towards is to support that particular objective. So Coherent Squad, really a lot of what they're doing on the culture team is to ensure that everything that we're doing within the initiative and outside of the initiative, just within donor services, is coherent, right? So what I mean when I say that, and the way that I always try to describe it is, if Paul Sullivan's sending out a memo today that's talking about polka dots, we're not talking on all of our culture meetings about zigzags, right? If we're talking about zigzags somewhere, we want everything to be talking about zigzags. So just, being consistent in everything that we're doing and making sure that it all is flowing cohesively and consistently. The Ideation Squad is one that goes into hibernation. I'm sorry, I have a little bit of a cold, so if I sound a little like, it's because I am. The Ideation Squad, though, they're the ones who, again, go into hibernation each year, but they're the ones who are forming up that idea gathering survey that we do each year prior to our Culture Summit. So I have kind of cycle slide coming up that kind of walks you through the whole process. But essentially, we have the Engage survey every year, which y'all are familiar with, I'm sure. From there, we take a look at the data from that and form up what questions we kind of want to dive into a little bit more. And that's what the ideation squad does, is they go through that data and decide what is it that we want to kind of dive into a little bit deeper through an idea gathering survey. And the data we get from that survey is kind of what we're workshopping at our Culture Summit each year. It's kind of like our cycle. And then the communication squad is one that's headed by our Cultivating Culture Communications Manager, Samantha Pollard, who's been a phenomenal addition to our team and a much needed asset. She kind of has streamlined the process for ensuring that we're getting updates out to kind of all the various communication channels throughout donor services and communicating with team members in a way that makes the most sense, right? If it's in, how do we get information, just to give you an idea, she has done a good job of taking a look at how do we get information to individuals who aren't in their email every day, right? Like I myself, I sit at a desk every day and I'm on my laptop every day, but not everybody is. So how do we get this information, this important information about surveys and Spirit Week and all kinds of things out to individuals who aren't in their email, right? So just to kind of give you an idea of some of the work that she's been doing and that she's been partnering with this squad on kind of orchestrating. And then the mentorship squad is going to be kind of framing up. They're a newer squad that's in the very early stages of kind of framing up a mentorship program within our Cultivating Culture team and kind of creating a buddy system for our culture champions too, which I'm excited to see kind of come out in the next, I will say maybe 6 months or so. So the second one is to create an engaging donor services work environment that makes all of us feel good about coming to work each day. Obviously, Celebration Squad feeds into that one. They're the ones who are solely responsible for all of the goodness that came out of Spirit Week, and really a lot of other toolkits that are available on our OneSource page that leaders and individuals can go to at any point in time to find opportunities to celebrate team members and celebrate Phlebotomist Week, promote the Engage survey. They do all kinds of fun things. And they've got a number of really exciting things that we're going to be doing in the coming year as well. So we're actually going to be kind of breaking that group into like the reoccurring things into like a bucket of like things that we're doing on an annual basis, and then like new projects that are maybe going to be more of a one and done. So that one's definitely going to be one of our squads that's kind of long lasting and has a lot of exciting things that they're working on. The Ambassador Squad is the group that has been from the start kind of working through the culture ambassador role as it was when it was kind of that nomination process through the survey, and then now in its new form as a mechanism for recognition. So kind of long-term work for that one is going to be reviewing the submissions for individuals who are submitted as people who are going to be receiving that Culture Ambassador Award, and then reaching out to leaders to notify them that, hey, Sally Davis on your team was notified that was submitted as somebody who is exemplifying good culture, and they should be getting this Culture Ambassador Award. Please go forth and celebrate them, right? And they'll be given the tools to order, send them a certificate, order them a pin, all of those kinds of things. Let me just take a quick drink. Sorry, I have a little tickle in my throat. And the Culture Champion Squad are the individuals who initially kind of helped to frame up what the Culture Champion role was going to be. And they're the group who kind of now on an ongoing basis sort of continues to review what it is that we're providing the Culture Champions in terms of like on the monthly calls, what is it that we should be sharing with them each month? Obviously, like ensuring that we're keeping them up to date on kind of everything that's up and coming within the Cultivating Culture initiative, kind of giving them a sneak peek at things that are coming in a couple of months so they can kind of be proactively brainstorming things that are to come, so they can sort of be working with their, leaders and teams on like, okay, we have a welcome book coming, for example. How can we best leverage this within our own respective teams and kind of get a head start on kind of the planning for that before we are like formally launching it with the whole system? So they sort of get like a little bit of a leg up on, anybody who isn't a culture champion to be able to kind of partner with their leaders and being privy to that information and, plan that information accordingly. the Team Empowerment Squad, they're the individuals who, I know we were talking a little bit earlier about the Team Empowerment Days, and I was absolutely just like glowing hearing all the excitement coming out of everybody's experiences with these Team Empowerment Days and how impactful they've been. So there was a squad that, kind of framed up what exactly those should look like and kind of how they should be broken up. Should it be like everybody in donor services from a geography, and like basically mapped out like what it looks like, which is kind of the framework that it is now. And kind of on an ongoing basis, they've then gone in and created a mini TED toolkit that is now live on our OneSource page too, just to give you an example of kind of their ongoing work, which is essentially a list of opportunities for individuals to get together and connect and spend time together and communicate outside of like the day-to-day and outside of their TEDs. So not sure kind of the long-term work. I think that one might be going into hibernation soon. It's kind of TBD at this point, but that's some of the work that squad has been doing as well. Vision Squad kind of helped to develop the vision survey. They're now in hibernation as well until a time where we might need to reassess. But at this point, I'm sure y'all are aware, but our vision statement is empowering people, inspiring donors, and saving lives. And that one just really does, it just feels right for all the good work that we're doing within this initiative. So, and the third and final objective, of course, is supporting the teamwork needed to consistently achieve our collection goals and the broader mission of the American Red Cross. So a few of the squads that are kind of supporting that one are the Habit Formation campaign. So the Highlights extravaganza that we did recently and the Highlights campaign, Sharing Up, all that came out of that squad. So they're the individuals who are kind of looking at identifying good habits that exist within donor services and how we might want to expand upon that, how we might want to make that a habit for all donor services, right? Kind of identifying things that are going well and making it a habit for everybody to kind of help to make our culture even better. Summit Squad's one that goes into hibernation every year after Summit, but they're the group that is responsible for kind of framing up the Culture Summit that we have in DC each year. So kind of mapping out what the content should be, helping the idea gathering survey or the ideation squad to review the idea gathering survey results, and just kind of like planning food and all those kinds of fun things. And are we going to have mission moments throughout the event and just different things like that? And I think I see a hand that went up. Bob, are there? I can't see hands. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Shayna has her hand up.
Thank you. Shayna, please.
Yeah, my question was, who gets selected to go to DC for this summit?
Yeah, great question. So it changes a little bit each year, and that's in part based on kind of what the theme or the intent or the goal is for that particular year. But I'll tell you that generally speaking, it's largely based on ensuring like balanced representation by department, geography, a good portion of the group being culture champions, and one of the biggest ones is space, right? Depending on where we're having the event, I'll say generally speaking, the kind of maximum capacity is somewhere around like 90 to 100 people. So it's kind of partly based on that information. I would say being on the culture team kind of maybe gives you a leg up, but that's also worth noting that not everybody that is on the culture team can attend. And we, of course, will also need to have individuals there who, a SME perhaps for, just to give you an idea, if a big focus of the event is perhaps going to be equipment, right? We're going to need people there from our process team who have a specific focus around like processes for equipment, things like that. So there isn't necessarily a black and white answer, but I hope that kind of gives you an idea of sort of some of the considerations as to kind of how we make that guest list.
Okay, so how is it selected based on what is going to be talked about?
Working with leadership, and then kind of like looking through our invitee list, right? So ensuring balanced representation. We make sure that we have at least one person from every region. So kind of just going through lists in that way. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Any other questions or anything in chat before I move on, Bob?
Not that I see, no.
Okay. Thank you. The Collections Advisory Squad is another one that feeds into this third one. And this is a newly formed squad I'm really excited about. Their first meeting is actually going to be the 16th of this month, and it's specifically for frontline collection staff members. So the idea is that we want to give those individuals an opportunity to be able to provide candid feedback to our process partners, our collections process partners, about how things are going with the new process or existing process and anything else of the like. So it's not necessarily going to be like a very scripted meeting. We want, it to be just sort of open-ended of, individuals who are on the culture team who are then on this squad are going to be, asked, go to your teams, ask them how things are going. If we just implemented a new process or just did a new upgrade, talk with them about it. Ask them if they have feedback. And if so, as I kind of mentioned before, you're kind of a liaison, right? To be able to kind of bring that information back to that squad and provide that feedback. Sort of a mechanism for providing feedback is through you. And then the metrics squad is the squad that we stood up at the start of this initiative that sort of set our metrics that we're sort of basing our success of the initiative off of, which are the ones that Robin reviewed with y'all this morning, which are honestly, just to be candid, really impressive. So that's kind of what those squads are. And that one's kind of in hibernation right now as well, but we kind of bring them out of hibernation as needed. And you are able to sign up for squads today. So I'll make sure to drop this link in the chat at the end of my presentation. I can't multitask. I'll end up just going cross-eyed. So I'll make sure to drop the link in the chat at the end of this, but you'll have an opportunity to go through and sign up for as many squads as you like. One consideration to make is that there's a couple of them that overlap in their times. So, just be mindful of that. You maybe only would perhaps sign up for one of the two that have an overlap. And, be aware of your calendar, right? If you always have a conflict at a particular time and you're never going to be able to attend it, maybe that's not the one for you. So just some things to kind of keep in mind. Yeah. And one other thing I'll note is that the Culture All Team call isn't something for you to sign up on here because the assumption is that everybody will be joining that one automatically. So you don't have to sign up for it. You'll already be on that invite. So this is our annual Listen Act cycle, which I kind of have been talking through a little bit on my previous slides. But essentially at the start of this initiative and annually, we sort of assess our metrics and our vision for the initiative. From there, we solicit feedback through that idea gathering survey. We review that data that we receive from that survey and the Engage survey, and we host our summit. From there, we determine what our post-summit action items and commitments will be, and we produce and distribute other program materials and deliverables. And yeah, Cody, please.
I didn't want to interrupt, but I did have a thought on that last signing up for the squads. So any collection stuff on the floor, I do want to point out that if you do sign up for these squads and there are certain times that you're going to be at blood draws, if you have that communication with your TS and manager, they can book you off the floor for these, or at least get a hand on and helping out so that you can attend these meetings.
Yeah, thank you for calling that out. And I'm glad that you said that, because for Frontline Collections folks, if you decide to participate in a full Culture Thursday, as I would call it, essentially you sign up for you're going to be on the Culture All Team call. And then if you end up signing up for a squad call for the rest of the day, you'll be paid for a full day, whether that's 8 hour, 10 hour, whatever, obviously with the expectation that you're participating actively in all those squads. But if you're somebody who's gung-ho, you're like, I'm culture all in, I want to be on all these squads, I want to be actively engaged, I want to be participating in these deliverables, all the things, you can do that. And your scheduling team will schedule you off those days and you will be paid. So something to consider. And if it's something that you're not interested in, and as Cody mentioned, if you just want to participate in one of your squad calls, just work with your leadership and they'll do their best to schedule you accordingly. All right. So these are just some of our kind of key activations up to this point. So I've mentioned the Culture Summit.
Sam, I'm sorry. Caroline asked a question. Is there a date we should sign up for a squad by?
Oh, great question. So I'll drop the link in the chat today. And if you could just sign up by the end of this week, that would be great. Thank you. Yeah. So some of the key activations at this point, as I mentioned, Culture Summit, we've talked about Spirit Week a little bit, and of course the Team Empowerment Days. I'd say some of those are just really kind of the key culture initiative activations that we've had at this point, just kind of helping to improve the culture. So 2023, this was after our first Culture Summit, we had 6 post-summit commitments. We had work-life balance where we were able to ensure that on an ongoing basis, so still now, 90% of Friday drives are ending by 6 p.m. and 90% of Saturday drives are ending by 2 p.m. And that was through work that we did from our post-summit commitments. We built in more time for two-way dialogue and staff development. That was kind of one of the key things that came out of that summit. And from there, that's when we committed to 2 team empowerment days each year, which we've continued to talk about, have just been really impactful to the teams. We've continued to review and solve challenges around ensuring appropriate hands-on training time, OJI experience, and impact the learner the OJI has on the collection event. There's far too fewer training teams due to significantly decreased turnover, which has really helped this one. And the OJI experience is now measured, which previously it was not, which has been a pretty impactful enhancement. Consistency of at-drive management was one of our commitments, and from there we updated and trained on at-drive management, and there's a new escalation and process that was implemented to drive consistency as well. Blood drive equipment, equipment quantity, we refreshed equipment and continue to improve it on an ongoing basis. And then process input, being involved in local and national decisions. So essentially we, confirmed and communicated best ways to provide input and process team and leadership. And for each of these, while we have them marked as complete, it's kind of an ongoing thing. We're committed to continuous improvement and monitoring for all of these. So to give you an idea, right? So these have all been complete for some time now. And as I just mentioned, the collections advisory squad is just starting this month. So kind of on an ongoing basis, we're continuing to, we're taking these commitments in these areas that, the field has told us we need to focus on and finding new opportunities over time to continue to improve. So we've stood up this new squad as a new mechanism for gathering kind of feedback on processes and things of that nature. And then this year, something that, I noticed going from 2023 to 2024 is most of the feedback that we received was more focused around how people felt, which I think speaks volumes to all of the work that was done in 2023 around just things that had kind of needed to be done for a long time, I think, in terms of equipment and really work-life balance and communication and things like that. So we did a lot in 2023, which led us to 2024, which gave us an opportunity to be like, let's focus on these things now, which is kind of how we feel about each other and our time and our experience here at the Red Cross, which I just thought that was so neat. Like we could see it even at Summit. I was talking with a couple of people while we were there, and just the feedback we kept seeing and hearing was all focused around these kind of 4 buckets. So the first one is time and communication. So we're assessing how we can enable everyone to have time to communicate, connect, and cultivate our culture. So from there, as I mentioned, the Team Empowerment Day squad put together that mini TED catalog, and that's now complete and posted to our OneSource page. That's not the only thing we're going to be doing with this one, though. So we should have a final decision around kind of what the next deliverable for number 1 should be, probably within the next month or so. For number 2, new employee experience, we're looking at how we can make new team members feel more welcome and part of the team. And with this one, we're making a welcome book, which is kind of essentially we're putting together a, it was previously called a lookbook, but it's like a directory of team members. So think of kind of like a Facebook, but it's kind of like it's a PowerPoint where all team members on a respective team will have a page. You can put some fun facts about it, and teams can leverage it in whatever way makes the most sense for them. If people want to opt out, they can, but essentially it's an opportunity for folks to either have printed versions of this or virtual versions of this to share with new team members and existing team members. And I like to look at this as a 2-fold benefit. So it's nice for the new team members who are maybe, they're new to the team, they just got through training and they're like, all right, I'm about to go out on this drive. I see I'm on a drive with Ted and Sally. I've never worked with Ted and Sally before. I don't even know what they look like. So they can go into this directory, they can see their face, they can learn that Sally loves dogs and Dave loves to read. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love to read and I love dogs. So you just are able to kind of connect with these people before you even know them, have a picture of them, and just be able to kind of relate to them and kind of have that in-group bias going into it. And then you can kind of relate to those people a lot easier right away and be like, oh my gosh, Dave, what are you reading right now? I just finished, you know what I mean? And just kind of automatically have that kind of in your back pocket. And then recognition, we're reviewing how we make, and that's not going to be a one and done either, right? So we're wrapping that one up, and then we'll kind of move into a phase 2 commitment for our second one as well. Number 3 is that recognition. So we're reviewing how we make colleagues feel more appreciated and enhance available tools for team members to recognize each other. So that's that Culture Ambassador Award that I've kind of been talking about, which is sort of the next era of the Culture Ambassador role, if you will. And then last but not least is the remote worker consideration. And the first thing that I'll say for this one is that essentially we've tasked each one of these to a squad, at least for these first deliverables. But this last one, we've said coherent squad, we're going to ask that you kind of keep a pulse on those first 3 as we sort of work through the deliverables to ensure that there's a remote worker consideration for those 3 to make sure that we're not focusing solely on like how it will be functional and best used in person, right? Recognizing that a large portion of our workforce is remote now. So that's kind of part 1 of that. And then part 2 is that we're taking a closer look at reviewing remote worker data from our ideation survey last year and looking for trends that may vary from what kind of the broader group was kind of trending towards, right? Recognizing that collections is about 40 to 50% of donor services. We wanted to make sure that that wasn't skewing any trends that may have existed specifically for our remote workers. So I'll pause there for a second. Yeah, I thought I saw a hand pop up.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
Shane has her hand up. Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Going back to the new employee experience and stuff like that, we recently in our area had a new employee hired specific for the team lead position. And I don't believe that the staff really embraced that, because it was like an outsider coming in, not starting from the ground level up, working their way up, blah, 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 blah. They just came in as a team lead. And we have lost that team lead because of the negativity and the lack of management to address the concerns of that specific team lead. And as far as training and stuff like that, when I went through training originally back in 98, okay, because I left for 22 years, I had the same trainer through my entire training.
Mm-hmm.
This time when I came in, I think I had 3 or 4 different trainers, which is good because you get a different perspective. Okay, you get a different training technique. One trainer might train a different way, and it might, coincide with how you learn and stuff like that. But it also doesn't allow a new member to build a rapport, a camaraderie with just one individual. And I don't know, I think that, I feel bad that we lost a good team lead because it was very negative for some of our staff to try and accept her as an outsider coming in, in a more leadership role. And I'm not sure, how to address that, or maybe find a way that, I get it. I mean, shoot, I was back when we were still using paper BDRs,
right?
And I left for 22 years, and now I came back and everything is electronic and stuff like that. I came back because I love the Red Cross. This is my passion. This is where I need to be. This is where, my draw is and everything else. And to see some of these people come and go and stuff like that, maybe it's not their passion, but at least we can give them a good foundation to see if this is where they need to be for their life career. And I don't think that we're always doing that. And it starts at the management aspect of it, and it trickles down,
Yeah, that gets, Shana, to your point, this is one of those places where sort of the yes and trying to activate in-group bias, right? Which is, as soon as you walk through that door, you're part of us. How do we help do it? Because I think your example there is a good one of sort of an out-group bias. Well, who are you? You're from outside. You don't know. So I think that's why we're doing this whole thing.
But
exactly.
But as I accepted her. I asked, how can I help? How can I make your job easier? How can I make you understand our policies, our procedures, our management and stuff like that? And that still wasn't enough to keep her here.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you definitely were doing the lion's share of trying to make her feel welcome. And I'm hopeful that, through the work that we're doing with this initiative, we can come up with better ways to kind of across the board, as a team, as an organization, make folks feel more welcome when they are external, like like you're talking about in your example, right? So yeah, I'm sorry to hear that happened, and I'm hopeful that we can, come up with some solutions kind of together as a group moving forward to make those people feel more welcome. Because I agree, there's definitely a good amount of work that could still be done in terms of the new hire experience and outside of just this welcome book, right? We have a long list. If Robin was on, I bet she'd brag on it a little bit. But we have a long list of ideas of things that I agree we need to be doing more with our new hires, just in general, to make them feel more welcome right off the start. So
Yes,
yeah,
definitely.
Emily has a question as well there, Sam.
Yeah, Emily,
Well, it's
please.
just kind of adding on to Shayna. I feel like the problem with the situation that you have dealt with would have been the question of why wasn't another staff selected for that lead position instead of an outsider? Like, why didn't we move up one of those staff into that lead position instead of hiring somebody else and immediately putting them into a lead?
Sure.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And that's because no internal staff member applied for that position.
That makes sense. So then,
Interesting.
in the sense of they shouldn't have had any hostility because they didn't want to own up for that position.
Exactly. And that's what I tried to convey to them. If you're not happy with hiring someone externally, then you should have applied for that position.
This is a
Absolutely.
good conversation, which we'll have these kind of conversations over time. I think, speaking of time, though, for the sake of the training, we might be a good time to move on to the next piece.
Sure. Yep, absolutely.
Sorry.
So no, that's okay. All really good content and things that I hope that you'll continue to kind of bring up throughout our meetings and throughout our squad conversations and things of that nature, for sure. Because I mean, yes to all of that. So this slide, I'm not going to read through all of this, but essentially it's just kind of showing that we're tracking feedback that we're receiving from those team empowerment days. So when you're at your team empowerment days, make sure that you're taking the survey that's available to you at the end of it and encouraging your teammates to do so, because we're definitely using that information to kind of continue to improve over time. And also wanted to just call out the impressive leadership training that we've been doing within donor services as well, because kind of to your point, right? I can't remember who was just speaking, but you were making a lot of good points about management and leaders, kind of setting a good example. And we're doing a lot of work and continuing to do a lot of work towards training our leaders, because it does, in many cases, start there. It starts with all of us, but you need that leadership buy-in. So kind of continually training our leaders throughout donor services is something that I think is going to be really important in kind of deepening this within this initiative. Sorry, for some reason my computer charger isn't working. We're real time people. Okay, moving on. Culture champions. So we've talked about them a little bit. Just wanted to kind of specifically call out the fact that we have a monthly call to action for them. I'll note that within the last few months we've received some feedback and kind of just noticed as a best practice that in many cases it's going to make more sense, I think, for us to make them the monthly calls to action last more than 1 month, just to give folks an opportunity to really make these things a habit in many cases, right? So, between PTO schedules, especially in a month with like a holiday, folks just might not have an opportunity to, really practice these things or share whatever it is that we have as that call to action throughout the month. So obviously Engage survey, we wouldn't be promoting for 2 months in a row, but for anything else, we might just make it more of a habit in many of the cases or many of the instances to be more than 1 month. And we just started these last April. So we're nearing our 1-year anniversary of doing calls to action. So still kind of a work in progress. But did I see another hand pop up there?
Not that I see.
No? Okay, perfect. Sorry. Just don't mind my lean as I plug my computer back in. Okay, cool. All right. And then this slide never ceases to amaze me. So I always joke that I've always felt like things at the Red Cross move really slow, generally speaking, and that is with the exception of our Cultivating Culture initiative. It feels like we were kind of building the plane while it was already in the air, and it's just been amazing, all of the good things that have come out of this initiative in such a short amount of time. I know we've kind of talked about a couple times this, just kind of started in September 2022. And here we are in January of 2025, having achieved so many things. We've started this Culture Champion program. We have these team empowerment days that everybody across donor services is doing 2 times a year. We've have habit formation campaigns we've launched. We've trained leadership multiple times. We've had 2 culture summits. We've had 2 spirit weeks, just so many impressive things that, we've just continued to, implement over time, some things on an annual basis. And I'm just so excited to have you all here as we work towards kind of whatever it is that the things are going to be in the coming year. And Bob, is that your hand that's up?
It is. Yeah. So
yeah. Hey.
We have a delightful thing to add to this milestone list, which is the virtual culture training of all the supervisors.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Yep. Good call. And then just a couple. Oh yeah. Cody, is it? It like pops up for just a second and then disappears. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So real quick to that training for the leadership, that's already done or that's still ongoing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Perfect.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did an initial, so at this point, all supervisors and above have been trained. And then there's just like essentially like annual training, right? It's kind of how I would summarize it. Bob, anything you would add?
Yeah. And supply chain supervisors are going through it as well right now. And in the future, there'll be like an annual thing where anyone from across biomed can, who hasn't gone through it, can go through it then. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the really neat things about the fact that, as we were kind of talking about earlier, donor services was the first group within biomed to do it. But now that supply chain and service delivery has jumped on board, we're able to do a lot of things kind of together. So I'm excited to kind of see that in particular, where that goes over the course of the next year, and just the different opportunities we find to do things with them, such as, the co-op supervisory training and things like that. So cultivating culture is on Teams. So you at this point should have been invited to a Teams page. I added everybody to it last week. So if you've not already checked or not gotten into your Teams, over on the left here, when you go into Microsoft Teams, it's, at least for me, it's the 3rd thing down. It says Teams. If you go in there, you'll find Donor Services Cultivating Culture Team. When you go in there, that's where all of our squad pages are. And there should be one there that is called, let me look, so I keep myself honest, about the culture team. So it's in the one that's called About the Culture Team that you'll find the slides from our orientation as well. And if you can't find it, just shoot me a message and I can always send it to you as well. And Cultivating Culture is also on the OneSource page and YouTube. So we have a YouTube channel. It's got all of our funny ambassador videos. It's got all of the videos that we've essentially done throughout this initiative so far. So those all live on this YouTube channel. And again, this deck with these links is on our Teams channel right now. So feel free to go in there at any point in time if you're needing to pull a video or resources for a team meeting, or just feel free to just go poke around and see all the fun stuff that we have on the OneSource page too. There's lots of good stuff out there. Something that I wanted to mention too, in a recent meeting, we one of our kind of culture all team calls, we did a brainstorm with our current culture team members to say, hey, as a new culture team member, what is it that you would have liked to have known that would have helped you out? Or what is it that you would like to pass along to our new culture team members as kind of like things that would be helpful to know coming into it? So up on the screen here, you'll see the feedback that people put up on the whiteboard. And then you can kind of see in the bottom corner little like thumbs ups and hearts that people kind of went in and liked their favorite ones. So you can kind of see like how much buy-in there was or how many people agreed with those versus like duplicating it and putting it up here again. But lots of things about just kind of being your authentic self, remembering to share your knowledge, solicit feedback from your teams, and I'll allow you to kind of go through those at your leisure. But just thought there was a lot of really good kind of tips. So versus reinventing the wheel and typing this all out into like a boring list, I figured I'd just throw a screenshot to you guys all to review at your leisure. And that's everything that I had for today. So any questions for me or anything in the chat? I'll come back into Teams and see if there's anything in there. Yeah. All right. So Bob, do we have time to do any breakout rooms, or are we?
Yeah. So folks, cool. So I'm going to put, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no. Okay. So Bob's going to go ahead and put everybody into breakout rooms just to kind of take a minute. I know when you get a lot of information, sometimes you just need a minute to kind of like let that settle and digest it. So we're going to put you into some small groups to kind of just talk about your key takeaways from kind of everything that I just shared with you all about the Cultivating Culture team. And then we can come back to the group with kind of any key takeaways or any questions that you guys might have after you take a moment to let it all simmer.
There we go. So we got Ridge, then Jared. Yep.
So what I'm getting is that this is a thing that is starting, it's growing, that we're all here to contribute and also all here to help. So this way we can make things better on every level from where we are, not just on a collections level, but it's also donors, collections supervisors, administration, pretty much everyone, all kind of helping, being part of a team together and realizing that we're all in this together.
Well said.
Absolutely. Nailed it. I love that. Yep, you got it. And Jared.
Yeah, kind of along the same lines. Part of one of the takeaways I had from the breakout group was, the kind of old phrase of "it takes a village," right? Like we can't do it on our own. We need our team members. We need the people around us to not only be efficient and productive, but also happy and satisfied with the work that they do. Otherwise, it's not, like it's all for nothing. So it does feel kind of empowering to now, to hear about some of the initiatives and the goals and the direction of this group, because then now, it can take that back or take something from on the road and bring it to light. And it does feel like very much to be a part of that village and cultivating the culture, so to speak. So.
Love that. Yes. Yes to all of that. I love that, we have to focus on like the metrics and meeting collection goals, but we also have to focus on making people happy. I love that. That's my key takeaway from today. Well put. And is it Monica?
Monica or Nikki?
Monica. See,
Nikki, you're still on mute.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you. Yep.
Can you?
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Oh,
back on mute. There you go.
I just love this. This just seems like this is just going to be an exciting experience for me personally. Again, I'm with the apheresis department, and we don't feel included as the mobile staff and things of that nature. So just to bring some growth to the fixed site is just going to be great. So thank you so much for this.
Oh, awesome. Yep. So glad to hear it, and not glad to hear that you're not feeling included, but glad to hear that you're excited about helping us to change that. So
yeah.
Awesome.
What you just talked about, Nikki, is a big challenge in every organization, which is there's always some groups that get a lot more attention because they have more needs or more challenges or whatever it might be. And then one of the key things is for like a culture team is that's part of why we have people from different groups to say, all right, we need to think about everybody, yeah, and include people more and more, even in just the way we talk. It's part of why a few times today when I was giving examples, I would give examples from different groups, from marketing, from scheduling, whatever, because it's easy just to focus explicitly or exclusively on collections. We really need to include everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Other questions, comments, observations? Yeah.
Yeah, just saw some Caroline put in the chat, agreed. I think the work from home people get left behind at times, and I'm excited to see how we can improve it. I agree. I think that that's a conversation that Robin Carter and I have had ad nauseum, is the fact that in many cases, some people have been working from home for a very long time, but, I feel like arguably in most cases for those who work from home, it kind of happened when COVID happened, and it kind of happened quickly and just was like, okay, I work from home, and not a lot of consideration was rightfully so at the time, really given to that of like, what do these people need to be successful working from home? And, you know, what kind of considerations do we maybe need to make for those who now work from home? So I'm really excited that that's kind of a focus of this initiative moving forward as one of those individuals who used to work in an office and now work from home. So for selfish purposes as well. And yeah, Shayna.
And I think it's going to be important for this group to take to the road people, to the people that don't get to work from home. They're always saying, oh, well, they get to work from home and they get to, you know, get up whenever they want and they get to, you know, spend time with their families and yada, yada, yada. But they also don't have the social interaction. They don't have the day-to-day, face-to-face, donor-to-donor, staff-to-staff camaraderie that we have. And that's a negative for our people that work from home. I think we need to take that out. And every time somebody says, well, they get to work from home and they get to set their own hours and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but they also don't get fed by the energy and the excitement and the enthusiasm that we have out here by being face to face, by being the front line.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Very well said. Yeah. And a lot of times I know a lot of work from home folks who work like 10, 12-hour days. It seems like they have flexibility, but they often have to, they end up, because they work from home, they can do it. And they'll work in the evenings to catch up and things like that. So, yeah. It's good. Most of you do. There you go. Yeah. And Shayna, that was just a really good example of what I want to talk about next. So thank you for that wonderful segue. That was great. Is compassion. There you go. Exactly. Do y'all remember, who remembers the definition of compassion from the neuroscientist I follow?
Empathy and action.
That's right. Empathy plus action. Exactly. Yeah. You and Joe and Allison was just right one step behind you. Exactly. Empathy plus action equals compassion. It's a great formula. And one of the key things, and one of the reasons why I was just so impressed with what you just did, Shayna, is that so often, again, we pour the compassion, rightly so, into the people that need it the most and forget, unfortunately, the people that don't necessarily need as much, but still need it. So that was a great example of showing compassion for work from home folks. And I'm glad you said it because I had no idea what the WFH meant. I was like, what does that mean? But
all the acronyms.
Exactly. So that's a big thing. And one of the things too is that a lot of times people don't realize, because there's a lot of advantages to going up in hierarchy, of course, making more money, etc. And the stress also goes up, and people don't often realize that. There's a lot more riding on every decision. So it's an interesting challenge. With the more the responsibility, the more the stress often happens as well, especially for, everyone I've met at the Red Cross at any level, when I get to know them, they all have good hearts, right? And people that care feel a lot more stress often, right? Because they don't want something to go bad. So earlier, we've talked about how yes and can be used for many different types of things, right? Prevents conflict, redirects it, and includes people, good innovation, great psychological safety, helps people feel included better. Let's put down. And to nudge, you can kind of gently nudge people like, hey, you're doing this really good, and let's come up with some ideas on how you can do it this next step even better, or something like that. But I want to talk about the compassion pieces I was mentioning before. Is a really big factor here. And so yes and for compassion is very helpful. And in this case, the yes is for the empathy, and the and is the action to help, right? So I love this because it's just a simple two-step process for me to remember, and I can think, all right, so how can I empathize with what they're feeling? And the good news is I don't necessarily have to empathize or agree with everything they're saying, right? Because sometimes when people are angry or whatever, they exaggerate. They'll say, oh, I'm so mad, that person's such a jerk. I'm not going to say, yeah, that person's a jerk, but I can say, yeah, I can see you're angry. This is a tough situation. Let's talk about it. And that person shares more about it. And as they cool down a little bit, then I'll say, hey, is there, anything I can do to help? Do you want me to give you some ideas on how to deal with the person, or talk to the person, or whatever it might be? So yes, you kind of take some time until they can cool down a little bit. Then Anne is offering that help. And sometimes I find that when people are upset, once they're cooled off, like, no, I don't need any of their help. That was it. Just thank you for listening. That's what I needed. So that can be really helpful right there. And so what we want to do is practice this, because we want to be able to be out there demonstrating this kind of compassion to other people, showing this to other people. And particularly when someone complains about something that we care about, it can affect us, or it can hurt us, or get us angry. And so yes and approach is much more helpful to say, yeah, I can see how this can be difficult. For example, I was at a blood drive, and this is last year at some point. And so I was talking to somebody. We always got along really well. At one point he said, hey, nothing ever, he was like, said kind of bitterly, nothing ever changes. I was like, what do you mean? He says, whenever something doesn't work, no one ever changes it. And I said, well, I can totally understand how it feels that way out here. And I'm just curious about those socks that you're wearing. And he said, what? And he looked down, it was the Spirit Week socks. And I was like, the Spirit Week, all that happened there because people said we need change and we need more fun. He's like, oh yeah, good point. So a bunch of change had happened. He didn't even see it. But I could have gotten defensive and been like, hey, we're doing all these changes. Why can't you see it? But I didn't, right? So yes, because I understand. A lot of times we don't realize it. Somebody earlier today was saying they didn't realize that the TEDs were coming from the culture team, and all of the culture team and everything we do comes from the Engage survey and the other surveys we do. So it's all showing how we listen and move on with that. Yeah, Shayna.
And I think we all live in such a fast food world. We expect change to happen so quickly,
Right. Yeah.
and don't understand the background of it, of how it takes time.
Yeah. Well said. And then by the time it happens, we don't connect it back to what we said. Yeah. So that's a really good point. So what we want to do here is we're going to do some practice. We'll put you back into these groups of people that you bonded with. So much so that some people are saying, hey, where's our partner? Where'd she go? So we'll put you back in those groups. And what we'd like to do is that someone volunteer to share a challenge, and anyone else in the group can respond with yes and compassion and practice it together. And so let's not make this like a really intense challenge, right? It's not therapy or a challenge that's going to take a long time to work through, but just something. It could be it's just frustrating when someone calls in sick and I'm the only one left to do a task, or some sort of challenge that you're working through. It could even just be a personal challenge, like, oh, I'm worried about my daughter. She's not doing well in school, et cetera, right? So nothing too intense, but just some challenge that other people can empathize with, and then offer some sort of, like, would you like some ideas or suggestions, right? That's the action in this kind of case, when you don't work directly with people. Okay, so you're going to do that, and you can, and when someone feels like they've been heard, they can say, all right, someone else can go now. So you can switch at any time that you want to and give other people a chance. And unfortunately, as you were saying, Shayna, earlier, you won't have enough time for everyone to do it, for every conversation to go fulfilled. But at least enough, hopefully, that you'll have a chance to practice giving it. At least 2 or 3 of you will get some compassion as well. So yes for empathy, and for offer. In this case, it'll be ideas, because you probably won't be able to give them help, but you never know. So let me just check in before we put you in your groups to practice this amazing art of yes and compassion. So everybody, that's a compliment to your team if someone's complaining about being called back. That's fantastic.
All right, after all this, I'm still not a Trekkie.
You're not a Trek? That's part of why we changed metaphors. Now we're using jumps.
You want to go to bed?
So, all right. So somebody needs to go to bed, I think. Let's see. Yeah. Mute. Oh,
Yeah,
there we
sorry,
go.
it's past my bedtime. You guys have been great, but
All right, so let's hear about it, folks, either in chat or live. What was it like with the Yes and Compassion? What was it like giving it? What was it like receiving it? Yes, please, Caroline.
It was really good. It makes it so much more comfortable and like a safe area to like say I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z and getting input and feeling like the people on the other side care. They want to help. They care about, the frustrations that I'm having. It's a very safe space.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. It helps it feel so much safer. Yeah, Shayna.
I realize that we're all in this group to be positive, like you said, use the yes and stuff like that. But there's certain things that I think are overlooked. And as a group, I would have thought that cultivating culture would address that. Something that our group talked about was drive leads. I realize there's been a big focus on our supervisors trying to transition our drive leads into being
So Shay, quick
productive.
question. I'm trying to find out what it was like to use Yes and for Compassion now. Can you speak to that?
Oh, nope,
Okay.
not in our group. Nope.
No, you didn't use Yes and Compassion? Okay. All right. So who else used it? What was it like? Write about it or talk about it?
I'll go. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
our yes and basically was using what I'm trying to do and nudge. Okay, you said nudge, and I like nudge, but I push. I don't mean to, but I try and force things like the participation. But a different format. Well, no, using the same format we already have, but using it its true capacity, like the Teams meetings and such.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent. Nikki, how about you?
Well, in my group, it was good to be encouraged to know, I'm not the only one that feels this way, and that we're a group, and this is the whole purpose of this collectively, is to figure out some solutions. So I thought that was pretty nice.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. And sort of building what Shayna you were talking about before, right? So we focus a lot on positivity, and keep in mind that the optimal balance is 10-1, not 10 to none, right? So about 10% of the time, we do want to talk about what's hurting us or what's struggling or what's hard. We want to be able to help each other. And that's the big thing. So a powerful culture, a really good culture, celebrates people with authentic positivity, right? And listens to people with authentic compassion. Sometimes when people don't have the skills, like it used to be when I would try to show compassion, I would do it in a way that was superficial because I didn't really know how to do it well. But the more we can do it, or I would have a fake positivity because I didn't want to bring other people down with my mood. So it's trying to find ways to do these things authentically and balance them. Yeah, and Anna wrote, in the best way possible, I sort of forgot about yes and. We made up the best job that we ever had. I thought about it intentionally. And when my group was talking about concerns, I generally put my heart in and empathize with what they were saying. That's good. So you were doing it. You were doing it without having to think about it, which is wonderful. And a certain percentage of people tend to do this naturally. A higher percentage of women than men, but there are a certain percentage of both that tend to do this really well. Not me. This took a lot of practice and a lot of effort. But it really goes a long way. And obviously we're talking about using it in a work setting in this situation because it strengthens our culture. It strengthens connections. It helps keep people wanting to work here longer. Right? Compassion helps in all these things. And it obviously is extremely helpful in our personal lives. It's really big. It's a really big deal. And I mean, so my fiance is about as different from me as you can get, right? So she grew up in Uganda. She's Muslim, and she's been poor her whole life, right? And so we met in Denmark, fell madly in love. And so she has experiences I have no idea about. I've never experienced that kind of thing. And I have experiences she doesn't know anything about. And so using Yes and to listen and really understand and have compassion for the challenges, for things that are just beyond my understanding. She feels really heard and I learn a ton. It's really helpful because my natural natural style is to teach, which doesn't help when I'm trying to learn when I don't know what she's talking about. So really doing that. And one of the things she tells me almost every day is, I love the way you talk to me. Thank you. It's such a sweet thing. So, and I did not get that 25 years ago. No one ever told me, thank you so much for being so compassionate with me. This is a learned skill. And I like to think that if I can learn it, anybody can.
Yeah, I wrote it in the chat. Have you ever
I
had
see.
a staff respond negatively to a yes and because they feel like you are just blowing them off? I get the whole positivity and I agree with the whole positivity, but me and my shrink go round and round, and we both play devil's advocate and everything else because everybody's not going to respond the same way to positivity.
Yeah, so yes and is actually trying to bridge the binary. So it's not positivity versus negativity. So the yes might be, they're really frustrated. Yeah, I can hear that. Like that makes sense, right? So you're actually not blowing off, you're listening. And the and hopefully is action to help, right? So and I want to do something. So if it's just positivity and you're not helping, then it's not yes and, right? So then you're just sort of like, shh. Just saying, hey, this is a really cool thing, whitewashing it. But so yes and means that you should find something to empathize with, and then and act, and the and is to do something with it. So when you're first learning to do yes and, sometimes it may come across that way. It takes some skill, it takes some time to practice. But I will tell you, I worked for a consulting firm for a year one time, small consulting firm, and one of the partners was kind of a bully, and she could be really mean to people. She went through a course where she learned about yes and she did it very poorly, but it was still so much better than her bullying. So I would say something and be prepared for the insults, and she would go, yes, you have a point here, and then she would try to build on it. And even though she did it very poorly, it was so much less bad than her normal thing that it still worked for me. All right, so folks, just in closing, because I want to give you a few minutes to get to your next thing. Hopefully you had a great experience today. You've learned a lot. You now know how to whiteboard if you didn't before. And it's just been such a delight, everyone. So thank you so much for putting everything in and putting your effort in. I look forward to seeing you at Culture Team meetings.